Hello there, and welcome. Tonight I want to take you somewhere extraordinary, somewhere that exists in the quiet spaces between what we know and what we can only imagine. I want to take you on a journey through a question so gentle, so strange, that it might just carry you all the way into the deepest, most peaceful sleep you've had in a very long time. But before we begin this journey together, before we step out into the vast cosmic darkness that surrounds our small spinning world, I want to know something about you. Where are you right now? Are you tucked into bed, perhaps with the covers pulled up to your chin, the day's worries slowly dissolving into the softness of your pillow? Or maybe you're sitting in a comfortable chair, the lights dimmed, the world outside your window growing quiet as night settles over your corner of Earth. What time is it where you are? Is it that magical hour when the boundary between today and tomorrow begins to blur, when thoughts become dreams and dreams become thoughts? And as we prepare to embark on this cosmic meditation together, as we ready ourselves to explore one of the most fascinating questions the universe might never have asked us to consider, I'd like to invite you, if you haven't already, to gently tap that like button, to subscribe to this channel where we explore the peaceful mysteries of the cosmos together, where every journey is designed to carry you into wonder without alarm, into curiosity without urgency. Share this with someone who might need a peaceful escape tonight, someone who might appreciate drifting off to sleep while contemplating the gentle impossibilities of our universe. But do all of this softly, without breaking the spell we're beginning to weave, because tonight's question requires a special kind of attention, the kind that comes when we're balanced perfectly between waking and sleeping, between knowing and wondering. So here's the question I want to explore with you tonight, a question that might sound impossible at first, might even make you smile at its audacity, but perhaps, if we move slowly enough, if we allow ourselves to sink deeply enough into the idea, we might find something profound waiting for us in its gentle absurdity. What if the universe folded in half every night? What if, as you lay your head down on your pillow, as billions of other conscious beings across our planet close their eyes and drift toward dreams, the entire cosmos performed a quiet, graceful fold, bringing distant galaxies closer together, bending the fabric of space-time in ways we've never imagined, creating a nightly cosmic origami that unfolds again with the dawn? It's a question that acknowledges its own impossibility from the start, doesn't it? Our scientific understanding tells us that the universe doesn't fold, that space continues its steady expansion whether we're awake or asleep, that the cosmos pays no attention to our human rhythms of day and night. And yet, what if there's something we're missing? What if our instruments, as sensitive as they are, as carefully calibrated to detect the faintest whispers from distant stars, what if they're simply not designed to notice a fold that happens so gently, so universally, that everything within it, including our instruments, including us, folds together in perfect synchronization? Consider for a moment how small we are in the grand scheme of things. Here you are, perhaps lying in a bed that's maybe 2 meters long, in a room that's perhaps 4 meters square, in a house or apartment that sits on a street, in a neighborhood, in a city or town, on a continent, on a planet that's just a tiny blue marble orbiting an average star. And that star, our sun, is just one of hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way, which itself is just one of trillions of galaxies scattered across the observable universe. The scale is so vast, so incomprehensibly huge, that our minds can barely grasp it. And yet, despite this cosmic insignificance in terms of size, we are the universe becoming aware of itself. We are the cosmos developing eyes to see, minds to wonder, hearts to feel awe at its own immensity. So when we ask what if the universe folded in half every night, we're not really making a scientific claim. We're not suggesting that tomorrow's telescopes will detect this fold. We're not proposing a new theory of cosmology that will revolutionize physics. Instead, we're doing something gentler, something more human. We're taking a walk through a thought experiment. We're allowing our imagination to play with the fabric of reality. We're exploring what it might mean, what it might feel like, if the cosmos had a rhythm we haven't yet discovered, a breathing pattern that matches, in some deep way, our own need for rest and renewal. Think about how night already transforms our world, even without any cosmic folding. As darkness falls, the harsh edges of day soften, distances become uncertain, the familiar world takes on a quality of mystery. The tree outside your window, so ordinary in daylight, becomes a dark presence full of whispered possibilities. The street that bustles with activity during the day empties out, becomes a stage for shadows and streetlights, for the occasional passing car whose headlights sweep across your ceiling like searchlights from another world. Night is when the boundary between the real and the imagined becomes permeable, when dreams begin to seep into waking consciousness, when the impossible starts to feel just a little bit possible. And in this nighttime transformation of our immediate world, perhaps we can find a gentle metaphor for our cosmic folding. Not a violent collision of space with itself, not a catastrophic crumpling of galaxies, but something more like the way a flower closes its petals at dusk, the way a bird tucks its head under its wing, the way you might draw a blanket up around yourself on a cold night. A folding that's less about destruction and more about protection, less about ending and more about resting, less about breaking and more about embracing. Imagine, just for a moment, that you could feel this fold happening right now. Not as a physical sensation, nothing jarring or uncomfortable, but as a subtle shift in the quality of space around you. Perhaps the walls of your room might feel just slightly closer, not claustrophobic but cozy, like the universe is gently holding you. Perhaps the stars outside, if you could see them through the light pollution and clouds, might seem to pulse with a different rhythm, their ancient light carrying messages from galaxies that are, during this nightly fold, somehow nearer than they should be. Perhaps the very atoms in your body, those tiny solar systems of electrons orbiting nuclei, might vibrate with a frequency that connects them to atoms in distant corners of the cosmos, all participating in this grand, slow, graceful fold. The history of human thought is filled with wild ideas that turned out to be true, and sensible ideas that turned out to be wrong. For thousands of years it seemed obvious that the Earth was flat and stationary, that the sun orbited around us, that the stars were fixed points of light attached to a celestial sphere. It took tremendous leaps of imagination to realize that we're actually standing on a spinning ball that's hurtling through space, that the sun is the center of our solar system, that those points of light are actually distant suns with their own planets, their own possibilities for life. So who's to say that our current understanding of the universe, impressive as it is, complete as it might seem, isn't missing something fundamental, something that future generations will look back on and wonder how we could have missed it? Perhaps the fold has always been happening, every night since the universe began, but it happens in dimensions we can't directly perceive. We know from string theory and other advanced physics that there might be more than the 3 spatial dimensions we experience. There might be 6 more, 7 more, even more than that, all curled up so small that we can't detect them, or extended so far beyond our perception that we're like flatland beings trying to understand a 3-dimensional world. What if the nightly fold happens in these extra dimensions? What if, while our 3-dimensional space remains apparently unchanged, the universe is performing an elaborate origami in dimensions 4 through 11, creating patterns and connections that we can only glimpse in our dreams? And speaking of dreams, isn't it interesting how our sleeping minds seem to operate by different rules than our waking consciousness? In dreams, distances collapse, time becomes fluid, impossible things happen with a logic all their own. You might dream of being in your childhood home and your current apartment simultaneously, of talking to people who are far away or no longer alive, of flying through spaces that don't exist in waking reality. What if dreams are not just random neural firing, not just our brains processing the day's information, but actually our consciousness briefly accessing the folded state of the universe? What if, when the cosmos folds each night, our sleeping minds are able to perceive connections and possibilities that are hidden from us during the unfolded daylight hours? This isn't to say that dreams are prophetic or that they give us access to secret knowledge, but rather that they might be showing us a different way of experiencing reality, one where the usual rules of space and time are more flexible, more forgiving, more willing to bend and fold. The Aboriginal Australians speak of the dream time, a realm where linear time doesn't exist, where all moments exist simultaneously, where the landscape itself is alive with meaning and story. Many indigenous cultures around the world have similar concepts, understanding reality as having layers or dimensions that most of us only access in altered states of consciousness. Perhaps these ancient wisdoms are pointing towards something our modern science hasn't yet learned how to measure, a folding and unfolding of reality that happens on scales both cosmic and quantum, both outside us in the vast universe and inside us in the depths of consciousness. Let's slow down even more now. Let's really sink into this idea with the kind of patience it deserves. Picture the universe as an immense piece of fabric, woven from the threads of space-time, embroidered with galaxies and stars, dark matter and dark energy. During the day, though of course day means different things on different worlds, but let's use our Earth's day as a reference point, this fabric is stretched out to its full extent. Light travels in straight lines across the vast distances, taking years, centuries, millennia, eons to journey from star to star, from galaxy to galaxy. The universe in its unfolded state is lonely in its immensity, with islands of matter and energy separated by incomprehensible voids of empty space. But as night falls, as consciousness across the cosmos begins to shift toward rest and dreams, the fabric begins to fold, not sharply, not with creases that would shatter the delicate structures of stars and planets, but gently, like silk falling into natural folds, like water finding its level. Regions of space that were distant begin to overlap in higher dimensions. Galaxies that were billions of light years apart find themselves, in some sense we can barely imagine, neighbours. The fold doesn't destroy the distances in our three-dimensional experience. You can't suddenly walk to Alpha Centauri, but it creates connections, resonances, entanglements that operate by different rules. Think about how a folded piece of paper can bring 2 points together that were far apart when the paper was flat. If an ant were walking on that paper, it might not even notice the fold if it happened slowly enough, gently enough. The ant would continue its journey, unaware that its flat world had curved through a higher dimension, unaware that points on the other side of the fold were now, in some sense, directly adjacent to its position. We might be like that ant, continuing our lives on the surface of space-time, unaware of the gentle folding that brings distant regions of the universe into mysterious proximity. Scientists have discovered that the universe is expanding, that galaxies are moving apart from each other, that space itself is stretching like a balloon being inflated. This expansion has been accelerating, driven by the mysterious force we call dark energy. But what if this expansion is only half the story? What if the universe expands during the day and gently contracts during the night? Not enough to reverse the overall expansion, but enough to create a cosmic rhythm, a universal heartbeat. What if dark energy itself waxes and wanes, with a period we haven't yet detected, allowing space to stretch and then relax, to unfold and then fold? The cosmic microwave background radiation, that faint echo of the Big Bang that fills all of space, might carry subtle signatures of this folding. Perhaps there are tiny variations in its temperature or polarization that correlate with the Earth's night and day, or with some larger cosmic cycle we haven't yet recognized. Perhaps the gravitational waves detected by LIGO and other instruments occasionally show patterns that don't quite match our predictions, anomalies that we attribute to measurement error or unknown sources, but which might actually be the universe gently folding and unfolding around us. And what about dark matter? That mysterious substance that makes up most of the matter in the universe, but which we can't directly see or touch. We know it's there because of its gravitational effects on visible matter, the way it bends light and holds galaxies together. But we don't know what it is, what it's made of, why it interacts with gravity but not with light. What if dark matter is somehow involved in the folding? What if it acts as a kind of cosmic scaffolding that guides the fold, determining which regions of space come together and which remain apart? What if the reason we have such a hard time detecting dark matter directly is that it exists primarily in the dimensions through which the fold occurs, only interacting with our familiar 3 dimensions through gravity? Consider too the quantum realm, where particles can be entangled across any distance, where observation changes outcomes, where the universe seems to operate by rules that defy our everyday intuition. Quantum mechanics tells us that reality at the smallest scales is fundamentally uncertain, probabilistic, full of possibilities that only collapse into definite states when observed. What if the nightly folding of the universe is related to this quantum uncertainty? What if, when the cosmos folds, it's actually exploring multiple possible configurations simultaneously, like a quantum superposition on the largest possible scale? During the day, when the universe is unfolded, perhaps reality is more classical, more deterministic, following the predictable laws of general relativity and classical physics. But at night, when it folds, perhaps quantum effects that are usually confined to the microscopic realm somehow influence the macroscopic structure of space-time. Perhaps the fold is a time when the universe dreams of different possibilities, different arrangements of matter and energy, different futures and pasts, before settling back into a single timeline when it unfolds with the dawn. This could explain why some of the most creative insights, the most profound revelations, seem to come during sleep or in the drowsy moments just before waking. Artists speak of dreams that inspire their work. Scientists describe solutions to complex problems appearing fully formed after a night's rest. Writers wake with entire stories in their heads. What if these moments of inspiration are actually glimpses of the folded universe, where connections that are impossible in our normal unfolded space suddenly become accessible? What if creativity itself is a kind of resonance with the cosmic fold, a brief alignment between human consciousness and the larger patterns of a universe that's more flexible, more playful, more willing to explore possibilities than we usually imagine? Let me tell you about something that happened to me once, though whether it was a dream or a moment of unusual clarity, I still can't say. I was lying in bed, not quite asleep but not fully awake, in that liminal state where thoughts become images and images become thoughts. And I had the strangest sensation that space around me was gently compressing, not in a frightening way, but like being wrapped in the softest blanket imaginable. I felt connected to everything, the walls of my room, the trees outside, the stars above, even to distant galaxies I could only imagine. It was as if all of space had become intimate, personal, immediate. The feeling lasted only a moment before ordinary consciousness returned, but the memory of it has stayed with me, a reminder that our usual experience of space and distance might not be the only way reality can configure itself. Perhaps you've had similar experiences, moments when the universe felt different than it usually does, when the ordinary rules seemed suspended, when impossible things felt possible. These moments are often dismissed as tricks of tired minds, as hallucinations or fantasies. But what if they're actually glimpses of something real, brief perceptions of the universe in its folded state? What if we all have the capacity to sense the fold, but we've been trained to ignore it, to rationalize it away, to trust only what our instruments can measure and our equations can predict? The ancient Greeks had two words for time, chronos and kairos. Chronos is clock time, mechanical time, the time that marches forward at a steady pace regardless of our experience. Kairos is the right time, the pregnant moment, the time when possibilities converge and transformation becomes possible. Our modern world runs on chronos, our science measures chronos, our understanding of the universe is built on chronos. But what if the universe itself operates on both chronos and kairos? What if the steady expansion of space, the predictable orbits of planets, the constant speed of light, all of these are chronos? And what if the nightly fold is kairos, a recurring moment when the universe opens itself to different possibilities, different configurations, different ways of being? Think about how this might change our understanding of time itself. We think of time as flowing uniformly throughout the universe, with only velocity and gravity able to create slight variations in its rate. But if the universe folds each night, time might fold too. Past and future might come closer together, causality might become more fluid, the arrow of time might curve back on itself in higher dimensions. This doesn't mean that effects could precede causes in our everyday experience, but it might mean that the relationship between past, present and future is more complex, more nuanced, more beautiful than our linear understanding suggests. There's a concept in physics called the holographic principle, which suggests that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on the boundary of that space, like a hologram that contains three-dimensional information on a two-dimensional surface. Some physicists think our entire universe might be holographic, with all the information about our three-dimensional reality encoded on a distant two-dimensional boundary. If this is true, then perhaps the nightly fold is actually a reorganization of information on that boundary, a cosmic data compression and decompression that happens cyclically, creating the rhythms and patterns we experience as reality. Imagine the universe as a vast holographic projection, constantly refreshing itself, constantly recalculating the positions and states of every particle, every wave, every field. During the day, the projection runs at full resolution, maintaining the vast distances and empty spaces that characterize our cosmos. But at night, perhaps the universe runs a different algorithm, one that prioritizes connections over distances, relationships over positions, meaning over mechanism. The fold might be less like a physical bending of space and more like a reprogramming of reality, a nightly update to the cosmic operating system. This could have profound implications for consciousness itself. If our brains are quantum computers, as some scientists suggest, and if consciousness emerges from quantum processes in our neurons, then we might be directly connected to the computational substrate of the universe. When the universe folds and reorganizes its information, our consciousness might fold and reorganize too. Sleep might not just be a biological necessity, but a cosmic one, a time when our individual awareness synchronizes with the larger awareness of the universe, downloading updates, processing information, integrating new patterns and possibilities. The mystics and meditators throughout history have spoken of states of consciousness where the boundaries of the self dissolve, where individual awareness merges with something larger, where the distinction between observer and observed disappears. These experiences are often described as timeless, spaceless, beyond the ordinary categories of thought and perception. What if these altered states are actually moments when consciousness accidentally or deliberately accesses the folded state of the universe? What if meditation, prayer, and other spiritual practices are techniques for attuning ourselves to the cosmic fold, for experiencing reality in its more connected, more unified configuration? But let's not get too abstract, too lost in speculation. Let's return to you, lying there in your bed or sitting in your chair, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of your body, the softness of fabric against your skin, the gentle rhythm of your heartbeat. You are here, now, in this moment, in this specific location in space and time. And yet, if the universe does fold each night, you're also connected to everywhere and everywhen, part of a cosmic origami that brings all points into potential contact, all moments into potential synchrony. Feel that for a moment. Feel how your breath connects you to the atmosphere, how the atmosphere connects to the planet, how the planet connects to the solar system, the galaxy, the local group, the observable universe, and beyond. Each breath you take has been breathed before by countless beings, has circulated through the oceans and clouds, has been part of stars and nebulae. The atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of dying stars, scattered across space in supernova explosions, gathered together by gravity to form our Earth, and eventually arranged into the pattern that is you. You're not separate from the universe. You're a temporary arrangement of universe, a way the cosmos has organized itself to experience this moment from this perspective. And if the universe folds each night, then perhaps sleep is when we most fully experience our cosmic nature, when our individual consciousness relaxes its grip, when the ego dissolves into dreams, when the boundaries between self and world become permeable. We might be returning to a more fundamental state of being, one where separation is revealed as an illusion and connection as the deeper truth. The fold might not be something that happens to us, but something we participate in, a nightly dance between consciousness and cosmos, between the individual and the universal. We need to talk about scale now, about the almost impossible challenge of truly understanding how vast the universe is and what it might mean for something so incomprehensibly large to fold. You see, our human minds evolved to deal with human-sized problems, human-sized spaces, human-sized timeframes. We can intuitively understand the size of a room, the distance to the next town, maybe even the span of a continent if we've travelled enough. But when we start talking about astronomical distances, about light years and parsecs, about billions of galaxies each containing billions of stars, our intuition fails us. The numbers become abstract, meaningless, like trying to understand the ocean by looking at a single drop of water. So let's build up slowly, starting from where you are right now. The room you're in, let's say it's about 4 meters by 5 meters, a comfortable space, familiar, comprehensible. You can walk across it in a few steps, touch all the walls, know every corner. Now expand outward to your house or apartment building, maybe 50 meters across, still within the realm of immediate experience. You could walk around it in a minute or two, you know what's on the other side of every wall. You have a mental map of the entire space. Keep expanding to your neighborhood, perhaps a square kilometer, an area you could walk across in 15 minutes, bike across in 5, drive across in 2. This is still within the realm of the familiar, the personally knowable. But now we need to make a jump, and this is where our intuition starts to struggle. Your city or town might be 10, 20, 50 kilometers across. You probably haven't walked every street, haven't seen every building. There are parts of your own city that are foreign to you, people living lives parallel to yours whom you'll never meet. And this is just one city on a planet that's about 12,742 kilometers in diameter, with a circumference of roughly 40,000 kilometers. If you could walk continuously at a comfortable pace, never stopping to rest or eat or sleep, it would take you about a year to walk around the equator. The Earth is already bigger than we can truly comprehend, already beyond the scale our minds evolved to handle, and yet Earth is nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the cosmos. Our planet orbits the Sun at a distance of about 150 million kilometers, a distance so vast that light itself, the fastest thing in the universe, takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds to travel from the Sun to Earth. When you see the Sun in the sky, you're not seeing it as it is now, you're seeing it as it was 8 minutes ago. If the Sun suddenly vanished, we wouldn't know for 8 minutes. We would continue to see its light, feel its warmth, orbit around a star that no longer existed, until that final ray of light reached us and darkness fell. The solar system extends far beyond Earth's orbit. Neptune, the most distant major planet, orbits at about 4.5 billion kilometers from the Sun. Light from the Sun takes over 4 hours to reach Neptune, and beyond Neptune lies the Kuiper Belt, the scattered disk, the Oort cloud, a vast sphere of icy bodies that extends perhaps 2 light years from the Sun. That's about 19 trillion kilometers, a number so large it has no meaning in human terms. You could line up 1.5 billion Earths between here and the edge of the Oort cloud and still have room to spare, but even our entire solar system, as vast as it is just a speck in the galaxy. The nearest star to our Sun, Proxima Centauri, is about 4.24 light-years away. That's about 40 trillion kilometers. If you could travel at the speed of light, which you can't, nothing with mass can, it would take you over 4 years to get there. At the speed of our fastest spacecraft, it would take tens of thousands of years. The distances between stars are so vast that we might as well be alone, isolated on our little island of warmth and light in an ocean of darkness. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, contains somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars, spread across a disk that's about 100,000 light-years in diameter. Try to imagine that for a moment. Light, racing through space at 299,792 kilometers per second, takes 100,000 years to cross our galaxy. The light from stars on the far side of the galaxy that's reaching us tonight left those stars when our ancestors were just beginning to leave Africa, when Neanderthals still walked the Earth, when the world was locked in an ice age. We're seeing the galaxy not as it is, but as it was, a fossil record written in light. And our galaxy is just one of trillions. The Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest large galactic neighbour, is about 2.5 million light-years away. The light from Andromeda that you might glimpse on a clear dark night has been travelling through space since our ancestors were barely human, since before we had language or art or any notion that we were looking at another galaxy. And Andromeda is practically next door in cosmic terms. There are galaxies whose light has been travelling toward us for over 13 billion years, nearly as long as the universe has existed. We see them as they were when the universe was young, when the first stars were still forming, when the cosmos was a very different place than it is today. The observable universe, the part of the universe we can see, because light has had time to reach us since the Big Bang, has a radius of about 46.5 billion light-years. You might wonder how we can see things 46.5 billion light-years away when the universe is only 13.8 billion years old. The answer is that space itself has been expanding while the light has been travelling toward us. The galaxies we see at the edge of the observable universe were much closer when they emitted the light we're now seeing, but they've been carried away by the expansion of space, like raisins in a rising loaf of bread being carried apart as the dough expands. So when we talk about the universe folding in half, we're talking about something of incomprehensible scale, performing an action that should be impossible. How do you fold 93 billion light-years of space? How do you bend something that might be infinite? How do you crease the fabric of reality itself without destroying everything within it? These are the questions that make our thought experiment so fascinating, so challenging to imagine, and yet so strangely compelling. But perhaps we're thinking about it wrong. Perhaps the fold doesn't happen in the 3 dimensions of space that we're familiar with. Scientists have proposed that our universe might have more than 3 spatial dimensions, dimensions that are either curled up so small we can't detect them, or extended in directions we can't perceive. String theory, one of our attempts to unify quantum mechanics and general relativity, suggests there might be 10 or 11 dimensions in total. M-theory proposes that our universe might be a 3-dimensional brain, floating in a higher dimensional space, like a sheet of paper floating in a room. If our universe is indeed a brain in higher dimensional space, then folding becomes much easier to imagine. A 2-dimensional sheet of paper can easily fold through 3-dimensional space without the surface of the paper itself being damaged or distorted. An ant walking on the paper might not even notice the fold if it happened slowly enough. Similarly, our 3-dimensional universe could fold through a 4th spatial dimension without us necessarily noticing. The distances within our 3-dimensional space would remain the same from our perspective, even as the universe folded through higher dimensions. Think about it this way. Imagine you're a 2-dimensional being living on the surface of a piece of paper. Your entire universe is that flat surface. You can move forward and backward, left and right, but you have no concept of up or down. Now someone in 3-dimensional space slowly folds the paper. From your 2-dimensional perspective, nothing has changed. The distances between points on the paper are the same, the geometry of your world is unchanged. But in 3-dimensional space, points on different parts of the fold are now close together. If you could somehow perceive or move through that 3rd dimension, you could take shortcuts across the fold, traveling instantly between points that seem far apart in your 2-dimensional world. This is what physicists call an extrinsic curvature, a curvature that can only be perceived from outside the space itself. Our universe might have extrinsic curvature that we can't detect because we're trapped within our 3-dimensional space, like those 2-dimensional beings on the paper. The universe could be folding and unfolding through higher dimensions constantly, and we would never know unless we could somehow step outside our 3-dimensional perspective, or unless the folding had some subtle effect on things we can measure. And perhaps it does have subtle effects. Perhaps some of the mysteries of modern cosmology are actually hints of this higher dimensional folding. Dark energy, for instance, the mysterious force that's causing the expansion of the universe to accelerate. We don't know what dark energy is, where it comes from, why it has the value it does. What if dark energy is related to the tension in the universe as it resists or accommodates the fold? Like a rubber sheet that stores energy when stretched and releases it when relaxed. Perhaps the universe stores dark energy during its unfolded state and releases it during the fold. Or consider the cosmic web, the largest structure in the universe, a vast network of galaxy filaments separated by enormous voids. Galaxies aren't distributed randomly through space, they form long chains and sheets with vast empty spaces between them. The cosmic web looks almost organic, like neural networks or blood vessels or the roots of some cosmic tree. What if this structure is influenced by the way the universe folds? What if the filaments are like the creases in a repeatedly folded piece of paper, the places where matter naturally accumulates? What if the voids are the spaces that open up when the universe unfolds, pushing matter toward the edges? Scientists have discovered that the universe is remarkably flat. Not flat like a piece of paper, but flat in the sense that parallel lines remain parallel, that the angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees, that the geometry we learned in school actually works on cosmic scales. This flatness is puzzling because it requires the density of the universe to be precisely balanced. Too much matter, and the universe would curve in on itself like a sphere. Too little, and it would curve outward like a saddle. But the universe seems to be balanced on a knife's edge, perfectly flat as far as we can measure. But what if this flatness is only apparent, only true for our 3-dimensional slice of a higher dimensional reality? What if the universe is actually curved in higher dimensions, folded and twisted in ways we can't perceive? A piece of paper can be folded into complex origami while remaining locally flat. Each small section of the paper is still flat even though the overall structure is complex. Perhaps our universe is the same, locally flat in 3 dimensions but globally folded in higher dimensions. This brings us to topology, the branch of mathematics that studies the properties of space that are preserved under continuous deformations like stretching and bending. Topologically, a coffee cup and a donut are the same. Both have one hole, and you can continuously deform one into the other without cutting or gluing. But a sphere is topologically different. It has no holes, and you can't turn it into a donut without cutting a hole through it. What's the topology of our universe? Is it simply connected like a sphere, where any loop can be shrunk to a point? Or does it have a more complex topology, with holes or handles or twists that we haven't detected yet? If the universe has a non-trivial topology, it could be finite but unbounded, like the surface of a sphere or a torus. You could travel in a straight line and eventually return to where you started, like walking around the Earth. And if the universe has a complex topology, folding becomes even more interesting, creating connections and shortcuts that depend on the specific way space is connected to itself. Some cosmologists have looked for evidence of non-trivial topology in the cosmic microwave background radiation, searching for matching circles or patterns that would indicate we're seeing the same regions of space from different directions, like looking into a hall of mirrors. So far, they haven't found conclusive evidence, but the universe is so vast and our observations are so limited that we might simply not have looked in the right places or at the right scales yet. Let's consider another possibility. What if the fold isn't uniform? What if different regions of the universe fold in different ways or at different times? Perhaps the fold propagates through space like a wave, starting from some cosmic center and spreading outward at the speed of a light or faster. Or perhaps it happens everywhere simultaneously, but with varying intensity, stronger in some regions and weaker in others. This could create a rich, complex structure of connections and disconnections, a constantly shifting topology of space-time. This non-uniform folding could explain some of the large-scale structures we observe in the universe. The cosmic web with its filaments and voids might be shaped by differential folding, with matter flowing toward regions that fold more strongly. Galaxy clusters might form at the nodes where multiple folds intersect, creating gravitational wells that attract more matter. The mysterious Great Attractor, a gravitational anomaly that seems to be pulling galaxies toward it, might be a region where space is more deeply folded, creating a kind of cosmic whirlpool in higher dimensions. And what about black holes? These regions where spacetime curves so strongly that not even light can escape, might they be related to the fold? Perhaps black holes are places where the universe has folded so tightly that it's punched through into another region of space, or even into another universe entirely. The singularity at the center of a black hole, where our physics breaks down and infinities appear in our equations, might be the point where the fold becomes so extreme that our three-dimensional description of reality simply fails. Some physicists have proposed that black holes are connected to white holes through wormholes, creating shortcuts through space-time. What if these wormholes are actually folds, places where the universe has creased so sharply that distant regions have been brought into contact? What if every black hole is connected through the fold to a corresponding white hole, creating a vast network of tunnels through higher dimensional space? The matter that falls into black holes might emerge from white holes in distant parts of the universe, or even in other universes entirely, recycled through the cosmic fold. But let's bring this back to the nightly folding we're imagining. If the universe does fold every night, and remember, we're using night as a poetic convenience, a metaphor for some cosmic rhythm we don't yet understand, how would this folding propagate through space? It couldn't be tied to Earth's rotation. That would be absurdly anthropocentric. But perhaps there's some universal clock, some cosmic heartbeat that synchronizes the fold across all of space. This cosmic clock might be related to the Hubble constant, the rate at which the universe is expanding. As space expands during the cosmic day, tension builds up in the fabric of space-time. When this tension reaches a critical point, perhaps the universe relaxes through a fold, releasing the tension and resetting the cycle. The period of this cycle might be related to the Planck time, the smallest meaningful unit of time, multiplied by some enormous factor. Or it might be related to the age of the universe, with the fold happening once every cosmic day, where a cosmic day is some fraction of the universe's total age. Or perhaps the fold is triggered by consciousness itself. This is a wild idea, far outside mainstream physics, but in our thought experiment, we can explore wild ideas. What if consciousness, wherever it arises in the universe, creates a kind of pressure on space-time? During the day, when beings are awake and active, this pressure keeps space extended. But when consciousness relaxes into sleep, The pressure decreases and space naturally folds. The universe might be breathing with the collective consciousness of all beings, expanding with wakefulness and contracting with sleep. This would mean that the fold isn't uniform across the universe, but follows the distribution of conscious beings. Regions with more life, more awareness, might fold differently than empty regions of space. The Earth and other living worlds might be nodes in the fold, points around which space-time curves more strongly. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence might actually be a search for other nodes in the cosmic fold, other places where consciousness has reached sufficient complexity to influence the structure of space-time. But how would we measure such a fold? Our instruments are part of the universe. They fold along with everything else. It would be like trying to measure the expansion of a balloon from inside the balloon. Everything expands together, so there's no fixed reference point. But perhaps there are subtle effects we could detect, tiny anomalies in the behavior of light or gravity that would reveal the fold's existence. One possibility is gravitational lensing, the bending of light by massive objects. If space is folding, the paths of light rays would be affected, creating subtle distortions in our observations of distant galaxies. These distortions would be different from the gravitational lensing caused by dark matter and ordinary matter. They might show a periodic pattern, strengthening and weakening with the cosmic rhythm of folding and unfolding. Astronomers might need to look for very small, very regular variations in gravitational lensing over time, patterns that can't be explained by the movement of matter alone. Another possibility is the behavior of quantum entanglement over cosmic distances. Entangled particles remain connected regardless of the distance between them, with measurements of one particle instantly affecting the other. If space folds, the effective distance between entangled particles might change, potentially affecting the strength or nature of their connection. Perhaps during the fold, entanglement becomes stronger or extends to particles that weren't previously entangled. This could create a kind of cosmic quantum network, with information flowing through the folded dimensions in ways that violate our usual understanding of causality and locality. We might also look for effects in the cosmic microwave background radiation. This ancient light, released when the universe was only 380,000 years old, carries information about the early universe. If the universe has been folding and unfolding since the beginning, there might be subtle patterns in the CMB that reveal this cosmic rhythm. Perhaps the tiny temperature fluctuations that seeded the formation of galaxies were influenced by primordial folding, creating patterns that we haven't yet recognized because we haven't been looking for them. The distribution of dark matter might also hold clues. We can't see dark matter directly, but we can map its distribution by observing its gravitational effects on visible matter and light. If dark matter interacts with the fold differently than ordinary matter, perhaps because it extends into higher dimensions or exists primarily in the folded state, then its distribution might show patterns that reveal the structure of the fold. The mysterious dark matter halos that surround galaxies might actually be three-dimensional shadows of higher dimensional structures created by the fold. And what about time itself? We've been talking about space folding, but in relativity, space and time are united as space-time. If space folds, time must fold too. This doesn't mean that causality would be violated or that we could travel backward in time, but it might mean that the rate of time's passage varies with the fold. During the folded state, time might flow differently, perhaps more slowly, perhaps in a more complex, non-linear way. This could explain why sleep seems to pass so quickly, why dreams can seem to last for hours while only minutes pass in the waking world. Our subjective experience of time might be more accurate than our clocks, detecting the subtle variations in time's flow that our instruments miss. Now we arrive at the heart of our contemplation, the gentle mechanics of how a universe might actually fold and unfold, breathing like some impossibly vast organism, drawing itself together in the cosmic night and stretching out again with the dawn. This isn't a violent process we're imagining, not a catastrophic collision of space with itself, but something altogether more subtle, more graceful. Like the way silk falls into natural folds, like the way water finds its level, like the way your own breathing deepens as you drift towards sleep. The universe, in our thought experiment, doesn't crumple or crack or tear. It simply relaxes into a different configuration, a different way of being, and then gently returns to its extended state when the cosmic morning arrives. Let's begin by imagining the transition, that liminal moment when the universe begins to fold. It doesn't happen all at once, everywhere, simultaneously, like someone flipping a switch. Instead, perhaps it begins at certain points, certain nodes in the cosmic web where the conditions are just right. These might be places where consciousness is concentrated, where life has evolved to sufficient complexity, where the fabric of space-time is already slightly warped by the presence of matter and energy. From these seeds, the fold propagates outward, not at the speed of light, that would be too slow for a universal phenomenon, but through higher dimensions, through channels and connections we can't directly perceive. Imagine it like this. You're watching the universe from outside, from some impossible vantage point in higher dimensional space. You see our familiar three-dimensional universe as a vast membrane, rippling with galaxies and stars, dark matter and dark energy. As the fold begins, you notice certain points on this membrane starting to move, not within the membrane but perpendicular to it, in a direction that doesn't exist within our three-dimensional space. These points pull the surrounding space with them, creating gentle depressions, soft valleys in the fabric of reality. As more and more points begin to fold, these depressions connect, forming channels and networks through higher dimensional space. The membrane that is our universe begins to undulate, to ripple with waves that propagate not through space but through the dimensions beyond space. Regions that were far apart in 3 dimensions find themselves approaching each other in the 4th, 5th, 6th dimensions. The universe isn't getting smaller in any measurable sense. The distances within our 3-dimensional space remain the same, but it's developing a kind of higher dimensional texture, a richness of connection that didn't exist in its flat, extended state. Think about how this might feel from inside the universe, from your perspective lying there in bed or sitting in your chair. You wouldn't feel the space around you compressing or stretching. The walls of your room would remain the same distance apart, the Earth would continue its rotation, the planets would maintain their orbits. But something subtler would be happening, something that operates below the threshold of ordinary perception but might still affect you in ways you don't consciously recognize. Perhaps the first sign would be a change in the quality of darkness. Not that it would get darker. The photons from your lamp or from the streetlights outside would still travel at the speed of light, still illuminate your surroundings in the same way. But the darkness between the photons, the spaces where light isn't, might take on a different character. It might feel deeper, more velvety, more present. The shadows in your room might seem to have more substance, not in a frightening way, but in a comforting way, like they're wrapping around you, holding you, preparing you for sleep. Your thoughts, too, might begin to change as the fold progresses. The sharp, linear thinking of the day might give way to something more fluid, more associative. Ideas that seemed separate might begin to connect in unexpected ways. Memories from different times in your life might surface simultaneously, creating a kind of temporal folding that mirrors the spatial folding happening around you. The boundary between your inner world and the outer world might become more permeable, not in a disturbing way, but in a natural way, like the universe is inviting you to participate in its larger rhythm. As the fold deepens, reaching its maximum extent in what we might call the cosmic midnight, the universe achieves a state of maximum connection. Every point in space is now linked through higher dimensions to every other point. Information, energy, perhaps even consciousness itself can flow through these connections, creating a vast network of instantaneous communication that transcends our usual understanding of space and time. This isn't faster than light travel in the conventional sense. Nothing is actually moving faster than light through our 3-dimensional space. Instead, it's like the universe has developed temporary wormholes, shortcuts through higher dimensions that allow distant regions to touch. In this fully folded state, the universe might experience a kind of cosmic consciousness, a moment when all the separate parts remember that they're actually one thing, one process, one being experiencing itself from countless perspectives. Every atom, every star, every galaxy, every living being might participate in this moment of unity, even if they're not consciously aware of it. The fold might be the universe's way of maintaining its coherence, of ensuring that despite the vast distances and the apparent separation, everything remains part of a single, unified whole. And then, as gently as it began, the unfolding starts. Perhaps it's triggered by some cosmic clock we don't yet understand, or perhaps it's a natural consequence of the fold itself, like a pendulum that must swing back after reaching its furthest point. The nodes that initiated the fold begin to relax, to return to their extended positions in three-dimensional space. The waves in higher dimensions calm, the channels and networks dissolve, the membrane of our universe smooths out and returns to its daytime configuration. This unfolding might be what we experience as waking up, as the return of ordinary consciousness after the strange journeys of sleep and dreams. The sharp distinction between self and world reasserts itself. Linear time resumes its steady march. The vast distances of space stretch out once again between the stars. But something remains from the folded state. Some trace or memory or possibility that lingers in the quantum foam, in the dark matter, in the patterns of our thoughts and dreams. Consider how this rhythm of folding and unfolding might affect the evolution of life in the universe. Life as we know it depends on a delicate balance of stability and change, order and chaos. Too much stability in evolution stagnates. Too much chaos and complex structures can't form or maintain themselves. The nightly folding of the universe might provide exactly the right rhythm of stability and change, allowing life to develop and flourish. During the unfolded day, life operates according to the familiar laws of physics and chemistry. DNA replicates, proteins fold, there's that word again, appearing at every scale. Cells divide, organisms grow and interact with their environment. Natural selection operates on the variations that arise, slowly shaping life to better fit its ecological niche. This is the phase of consolidation, of testing and refinement, of gradual adaptation. But during the folded night, something else might happen. The connections that form through higher dimensions might allow for a different kind of information transfer, a different kind of evolution. Perhaps genetic information can flow between organisms that aren't directly related, or between organisms on different worlds, creating a kind of cosmic gene pool. Perhaps consciousness itself evolves during the fold, developing new capabilities, new ways of processing information, new forms of awareness that are then integrated into the biological substrate when the universe unfolds again. This could explain some of the mysteries of evolution on Earth. The sudden appearance of complex life during the Cambrian explosion, the rapid development of consciousness and intelligence, the seemingly coordinated evolution of different species to fill ecological niches. All of these might be influenced by the information and possibilities that flow through the cosmic fold. Evolution might not be purely random, not purely driven by local environmental pressures, but might also be guided by patterns and potentials that exist in the folded state of the universe. And what about consciousness itself? We still don't really understand how consciousness arises from matter, how the subjective experience of being emerges from the objective interactions of neurons and synapses. Some scientists and philosophers have proposed that consciousness is fundamental to the universe, that it's not something that emerges from complex arrangements of matter, but something that matter participates in, or channels. If this is true, then the folding of the universe might be intimately connected to consciousness. Perhaps consciousness is what actually drives the fold. Not human consciousness alone, but consciousness wherever it arises in the universe. Every aware being, from the simplest organism that can sense and respond to its environment, to the most complex intelligences we can imagine, might contribute to a kind of cosmic pressure that causes space to fold. When these consciousnesses enter the state we call sleep, when they release their grip on waking awareness, the pressure relaxes and the universe folds. When they wake, when consciousness reasserts itself, the pressure returns and the universe unfolds. This would mean that sleep isn't just a biological necessity, but a cosmic one. Every time you go to sleep, you're participating in the universe's larger rhythm, contributing to the great folding that maintains the cosmos's coherence and connectivity. Your dreams might not just be your brain processing the day's experiences, but might also be glimpses of the folded universe. Fragments of the cosmic consciousness that emerges when all points in space are brought into connection. Think about the common elements of dreams across all human cultures, the fluid nature of time and space, the ability to be in multiple places simultaneously, the presence of deceased loved ones, the transformation of one thing into another, the sense of meaning that transcends logical explanation. These might not be quirks of human neurology, but accurate perceptions of how reality operates in the folded state. Dreams might be our truest glimpse of the universe's deeper nature, showing us a reality where the usual rules are suspended and everything is possible. The fold might also affect the fundamental forces of nature. We know of 4 fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. At very high energies, like those present in the early universe, these forces are thought to unify into a single force. Perhaps during the fold, when different regions of space are brought into contact through higher dimensions, the forces partially reunify. Gravity might become slightly stronger or weaker, electromagnetism might operate differently, the nuclear forces might allow for interactions that are normally forbidden. These changes would be tiny, too small to notice in everyday life, but they might have cumulative effects over time. The fold might be responsible for some of the fine-tuning of physical constants that makes life possible. If the forces varied randomly, the universe would likely be sterile, unable to support the complex chemistry necessary for life. But if they vary in a rhythmic, predictable way through the fold, this might create pockets of stability where life can emerge and thrive. Water, that essential molecule for life as we know it, might be particularly affected by the fold. Water has many unusual properties. It expands when it freezes, it has an unusually high heat capacity, it forms hydrogen bonds that give it unique chemical properties. What if these properties are enhanced or modified during the fold? What if water becomes even better at storing and transmitting information during the folded state, serving as a kind of cosmic memory that preserves patterns and possibilities from one cycle to the next? This could explain why water has been so central to human spirituality and mythology. Holy water, healing springs, the rivers of the underworld, the primordial waters of creation, all of these might be intuitive recognitions of water's special role in the cosmic fold. When you drink water, you might not just be hydrating your body, but also connecting yourself to the larger patterns of the universe, to the information and possibilities that flow through the fold. The fold might also influence electromagnetic radiation in subtle ways. Light, radio waves, all forms of electromagnetic radiation might carry additional information during the folded state, information encoded not in their frequency or amplitude, but in their passage through higher dimensions. This could explain some of the anomalous experiences people report: sudden insights, telepathic connections, premonitions. These might not be supernatural phenomena, but natural consequences of the additional information channels that open during the fold. Consider too how the fold might affect time. We've been talking about the fold as if it happens in time, as if there's a before, during and after. But if time itself is folding along with space, the situation becomes much more complex and interesting. During the fold, causality might become more fluid. Events that are normally separated by strict cause and effect might become more interrelated, more mutually influential. The future might influence the past just as the past influences the future, creating closed time-like curves that allow for a kind of cosmic self-consistency. This doesn't mean that paradoxes would arise or that free will would be violated. Instead, it might mean that the universe has a kind of holistic coherence that transcends our usual understanding of causality. Every event might be both cause and effect, both beginning and end, woven into a tapestry of meaning that only becomes fully apparent during the fold. The universe might be constantly editing itself, adjusting its history and future to maintain consistency and coherence, and the fold might be when this editing happens. Your own life, your own choices and experiences might be part of this larger pattern. The decisions you make, the thoughts you think, the dreams you dream might ripple backward and forward through time during the fold, influencing events in ways you can't directly perceive. You might be collaborating with past and future versions of yourself, with alternate versions of yourself in parallel universes, all working together to create the specific pattern of reality you experience. This could explain the phenomenon of synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. During the fold, events that seem unconnected in our normal experience of space and time might be revealed as deeply connected, part of a larger pattern that spans dimensions and universes. The book that falls open to exactly the right page, the chance encounter that changes your life, the dream that provides the solution to a problem, all of these might be examples of information flowing through the folded dimensions, creating connections that seem miraculous from our limited perspective. As we contemplate this rhythm of folding and unfolding, we might wonder about its origin. Has the universe always folded since the moment of the Big Bang? Or did the folding begin at some point in cosmic history, perhaps when the first consciousness emerged, or when the universe reached a certain size or complexity? And will it continue forever? Or is there some cosmic endpoint where the folding will stop, where the universe will either remain permanently extended or permanently folded? These questions lead us to even deeper mysteries. Perhaps the Big Bang itself was a kind of unfolding, a moment when a previously folded universe suddenly extended into the three-dimensional space we inhabit. Perhaps what we call the Big Bang was actually the first cosmic morning, the first time the universe woke up and stretched out after an eternal night of infinite folding, and perhaps what we call the heat death of the universe, that hypothetical future state of maximum entropy and minimum energy, will actually be the final folding, the cosmic night from which there is no waking. But let's not get too caught up in beginnings and endings. Right now, in this moment, you're here, participating in the rhythm if it exists, riding the wave of folding and unfolding whether you're aware of it or not. Feel your breath moving in and out, a smaller echo of the universe's hypothetical breathing. Feel your consciousness flickering between attention and distraction, between focus and drift, perhaps resonating with larger cosmic rhythms. You're not separate from the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself, folding and unfolding in fractal patterns that repeat at every scale. The fold might manifest differently at different scales. At the quantum level, particles might fold through dimensions we can barely imagine, their wave functions collapsing and expanding in harmony with the cosmic rhythm. At the atomic level, electron orbitals might shift subtly, molecules might vibrate with different frequencies, chemical reactions might proceed along different pathways. At the biological level, cells might communicate through quantum entanglement, organisms might share information through morphic fields, ecosystems might synchronize in ways that transcend ordinary physical interaction. At the planetary level, the fold might influence weather patterns, ocean currents, the movement of tectonic plates. The Earth itself might be breathing with the cosmic rhythm, its magnetic field fluctuating, its rotation varying imperceptibly, its living systems pulsing with a unified heartbeat. At the stellar level, stars might brighten and dim, solar winds might strengthen and weaken, stellar formation might accelerate and decelerate. At the galactic level, spiral arms might tighten and loosen, black holes might become more or less active, dark matter halos might expand and contract. And at the larger scales, the cosmic web itself might be shaped by the fold, with filaments forming along the creases where space regularly folds, voids opening in regions that resist folding, clusters gathering at nodes where multiple folds intersect. The entire observable universe might be structured by billions of years of regular folding and unfolding, like a landscape shaped by the rhythm of tides or the cycle of seasons. This brings us back to you, to your immediate experience, to the reality of your existence in this possibly folding universe. Whether or not the universe actually folds, whether or not our thought experiment corresponds to any physical reality, the contemplation itself has value. It invites you to see reality as more fluid, more interconnected, more alive than our everyday experience suggests. It reminds you that the universe is far stranger, far more wonderful than we usually imagine, that mysteries remain despite our scientific progress, that there's always more to discover, always more to wonder about. If the universe truly folds in half every night, if this cosmic origami we've been imagining actually occurs, then surely there must be traces, whispers, subtle clues left behind in the fabric of reality that we could detect if only we knew how to look, if only we understood what patterns to search for in the vast ocean of data our instruments collect. The fold, gentle as we imagine it to be, would still leave its fingerprints on spacetime, would still create ripples and echoes that propagate through the cosmos, would still influence the behavior of light and matter in ways that patient observation might reveal. So let us become cosmic detectives now, searching for evidence of something that might not exist, looking for shadows of a phenomenon that might be nothing more than a beautiful thought experiment, and yet approaching our search with the same careful attention we would bring to any scientific investigation. Light, that fundamental messenger of the universe, would surely be affected by a cosmic fold. Every photon that travels through space would have to navigate the changing geometry of the fold, would have to find its way through dimensions that expand and contract, through connections that form and dissolve with each cosmic breath. We receive light from galaxies billions of light years away, light that has been travelling toward us for most of the universe's history. If the universe has been folding and unfolding during that time, then that ancient light has passed through countless folds, has been subtly influenced by each cosmic night it encountered on its long journey to our telescopes. Think about what this might mean for our observations of distant galaxies. When we look at a galaxy 10 billion light years away, we're seeing it as it was 10 billion years ago, but the light from that galaxy has experienced every fold that occurred during its journey to us. If we assume one fold per cosmic day, and if a cosmic day is something like 1,000,000 years, then that light has passed through 10,000 folds. Each fold might have shifted its wavelength slightly, might have altered its polarization, might have introduced tiny variations in its intensity. These effects would be cumulative, building up over the billions of years of travel, potentially creating observable signatures in the light we receive. Perhaps this could explain some of the anomalies astronomers have noticed in their observations. The cosmic microwave background radiation, that ancient light from the early universe, shows tiny fluctuations in temperature and polarization that we attribute to quantum fluctuations in the early universe. But what if some of these fluctuations are actually the accumulated effects of billions of years of folding? What if the patterns we see in the CMB are not just fossils from the universe's birth, but also records of its breathing, its rhythm of folding and unfolding throughout cosmic history? There's something called the cosmic dipole, an apparent motion of our galaxy through space that creates a slight asymmetry in the cosmic microwave background. We see the CMB slightly blue-shifted in one direction and slightly red-shifted in the opposite direction, which we interpret as evidence that we're moving through space at about 600 kilometers per second relative to the CMB rest frame. But what if this dipole is not entirely due to our motion? What if part of it comes from the fold, from a subtle asymmetry in how space folds around us, creating an apparent motion that's actually a geometric effect of higher dimensional curvature? Gravitational lensing, the bending of light by massive objects, might also reveal traces of the fold. When light from a distant galaxy passes near a massive cluster of galaxies, the cluster's gravity bends the light, creating multiple images or distorted arcs that we can observe. We use these observations to map the distribution of dark matter, to measure the masses of galaxy clusters, to study the structure of the universe. But if space is folding, this would add another layer of complexity to gravitational lensing. The fold itself might act as a lens, a gentle warping of space that affects the paths of light rays in ways that can't be explained by matter alone. Astronomers have noticed that some gravitational lenses seem to produce more distortion than their visible matter can account for, which we attribute to dark matter. But what if some of this extra lensing comes from the fold? What if the mysterious dark matter halos that surround galaxies are partially an effect of how space folds around massive objects? This wouldn't eliminate the need for dark matter entirely, but it might mean we need less of it than we think, that some of its apparent effects are actually geometric consequences of a folding universe. The expansion of the universe itself might be influenced by the fold. We've discovered that the universe's expansion is accelerating, driven by what we call dark energy. This dark energy seems to have a constant density throughout space, pushing galaxies apart with ever-increasing speed. But what if dark energy is related to the fold? What if the energy that drives the expansion builds up during the unfolded state and is partially released during the fold? This could create a cyclic variation in the expansion rate, a cosmic breathing that we haven't detected because we haven't been looking for it on the right timescales. Consider how we measure the expansion of the universe. We use standard candles like Type Ia supernova, explosions of white dwarf stars that all have roughly the same intrinsic brightness. By measuring how dim these supernovae appear, we can calculate their distance, and by measuring their redshift, we can determine how fast they're moving away from us. But if the universe folds, this could introduce systematic errors in our measurements. Light from supernovae at different distances would have passed through different numbers of folds, potentially affecting their apparent brightness in ways we haven't accounted for. There's also the question of cosmic voids, those vast empty regions between galaxy filaments that make up most of the volume of the universe. These voids aren't completely empty. They contain some galaxies, some dark matter, some gas, but they're far less dense than the filaments and clusters. What if these voids are related to the fold? What if they're regions where space resists folding, where the geometry remains more extended even during the cosmic night? Or conversely, what if they're regions where the fold is strongest, where matter has been pushed out toward the edges by repeated folding and unfolding? The cosmic web itself, that largest structure in the universe, might be shaped by the fold. Galaxies aren't distributed randomly but form a web-like pattern of filaments and nodes. We usually explain this structure as the result of gravitational collapse, with matter flowing along filaments toward the nodes where galaxy clusters form. But what if the fold provides an additional organizing principle? What if the filaments form along the natural creases where space prefers to fold, like the lines that appear when you repeatedly fold and unfold a piece of paper? Let's think about gravity waves, those ripples in spacetime that we've recently learned to detect with instruments like LIGO and Virgo. When massive objects accelerate, they create waves that propagate through space at the speed of light, stretching and squeezing space as they pass. We've detected gravity waves from merging black holes and neutron stars, confirming one of Einstein's predictions and opening a new window on the universe. But what if the fold also creates gravity waves? What if the gentle folding and unfolding of space generates a background of gravitational radiation that we haven't yet detected because it's too weak or too low frequency for our current instruments? This gravitational wave background from the fold would be different from the waves produced by discrete events like black hole mergers. It would be continuous, rhythmic, like the sound of the universe breathing. It might have a characteristic frequency related to the period of the fold, creating a cosmic hum that permeates all of space. Future gravitational wave detectors, especially space-based instruments that can detect lower frequencies, might be able to hear this cosmic breathing, providing direct evidence of the fold. The behavior of quantum systems might also be affected by the fold. Quantum mechanics tells us that particles exist in superposition states until they're observed, that entangled particles remain connected regardless of distance, that the vacuum of space seethes with virtual particles constantly appearing and disappearing. What if these quantum phenomena are influenced by the fold? What if superposition is easier to maintain during the folded state, when different possibilities are brought closer together in higher dimensions? What if entanglement is stronger during the fold, when the distance between particles is effectively reduced? Scientists have noticed that some quantum systems seem to maintain coherence longer than expected, resisting the decoherence that usually destroys quantum states. What if this unexpected coherence occurs during the folded state? What if the fold provides a kind of protection for quantum information, allowing it to survive longer and travel farther than our theories predict? This could have implications for quantum computing, for quantum communication, for our understanding of how quantum effects might play a role in biological systems. Speaking of biological systems, life itself might carry traces of the fold. Evolution has fine-tuned organisms to respond to various cycles, daily cycles of light and dark, monthly lunar cycles, yearly seasonal cycles. What if organisms have also evolved to respond to the cosmic fold, even if they're not consciously aware of it? What if our circadian rhythms, our sleep cycles, our patterns of brain activity are partially synchronized with the cosmic folding we're imagining? There's something called circadian rhythm sleep disorder, where people's internal clocks don't match the 24-hour day. Some people have rhythms slightly longer than 24 hours, others slightly shorter. What if these variations reflect different sensitivities to the cosmic fold? What if some people are more attuned to the universe's rhythm than others, their biological clocks trying to match a cosmic cycle that doesn't quite align with Earth's rotation? The mysterious phenomenon of dark matter might be intimately connected to the fold. We know dark matter exists because we can see its gravitational effects. Galaxies rotate too fast to be held together by visible matter alone. Galaxy clusters have more mass than we can account for. Gravitational lensing is stronger than visible matter can explain. But we don't know what dark matter is made of. We've searched for dark matter particles with increasingly sensitive detectors, but we haven't found them. What if that's because dark matter isn't made of particles in the conventional sense? What if dark matter exists primarily in the folded dimensions, only interacting with our three-dimensional space through gravity? During the cosmic night, when the universe folds, dark matter might become more accessible, more interactive. This could explain why dark matter seems to form halos around galaxies. These might be regions where the fold is strongest, where the boundary between our dimensions and the dark matter dimensions is thinnest. The distribution of dark matter might actually be mapping the structure of the fold, showing us how space curves through higher dimensions. There's also dark energy to consider, that mysterious force that's accelerating the expansion of the universe. Dark energy makes up about 68% of the universe's energy density, but we have no idea what it is. The simplest explanation is that it's the energy of empty space itself, what physicists call the cosmological constant. But the value of the cosmological constant that we observe is vastly smaller than what quantum mechanics predicts, a discrepancy of 120 orders of magnitude that's been called the worst prediction in the history of physics. What if dark energy is related to the tension created by the fold? Imagine space as an elastic membrane that stores energy when stretched. During the unfolded state, space is stretched to its maximum extent, storing dark energy. During the fold, some of this energy is released, perhaps flowing into other dimensions or being converted into other forms. The dark energy we observe might be the residual tension that remains even in the folded state, the minimum energy required to prevent the universe from collapsing completely. This could explain why dark energy seems to have become dominant relatively recently in cosmic history. For the first several billion years after the Big Bang, the universe was dominated by matter and radiation. But about 5 billion years ago, dark energy began to dominate, accelerating the expansion. What if this transition marks a change in the folding pattern? What if the universe's folding rhythm changed as it aged, like a heart developing an irregular beat? The acceleration might not be a smooth, continuous process, but might vary with the fold, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. Let's consider some specific observations that might reveal the fold. The Hubble tension, for instance, the disagreement between different measurements of the universe's expansion rate. When we measure the expansion rate using the cosmic microwave background, we get one value. When we measure it using supernovae and other local distance indicators, we get a slightly different value. This discrepancy has persisted despite increasingly precise measurements and has become one of the most pressing problems in cosmology. What if the Hubble tension is telling us about the fold? The CMB measurements look back to the early universe, integrating over billions of years of cosmic history. The supernova measurements look at more recent times, the last few billion years. If the folding pattern has changed over cosmic history, if the rhythm has shifted or the amplitude has varied, this could create exactly the kind of discrepancy we observe. We might be measuring the average expansion rate over different folding cycles, getting different values because we're sampling different phases of the cosmic breathing. Another puzzling observation is the alignment of cosmic structures on the larger scales. The axes of galaxy clusters, the polarization of quasars, the orientation of the cosmic web, all seem to show unexpected alignments that shouldn't exist if the universe is isotropic and homogeneous as we believe. These alignments have been called the axes of evil because they seem to point to a preferred direction in space, contradicting the Copernican principle that no location or direction in the universe is special. But what if these alignments are related to the fold? What if there's a preferred direction in higher dimensional space along which the universe folds? This wouldn't make our location special. Every point in the universe would experience the same folding direction, but it would create a universal alignment that we might detect in the orientation of cosmic structures. The fold might have a handedness, a chirality, like the difference between your left and right hands, that influences how structures form and evolve. Time variations in fundamental constants might also reveal the fold. Some physicists have suggested that constants like the fine structure constant, which determines the strength of electromagnetic interaction, might vary over cosmic time or in different regions of space. Observations of distant quasars have provided hints of such variations, though the evidence is controversial and not widely accepted. But what if these constants do vary with the fold? What if the strength of forces, the masses of particles, the speed of light itself subtly change as the universe folds and unfolds? This wouldn't violate the principle of relativity or break the laws of physics. The constants would still be constant within any local reference frame, but they might vary on cosmic scales in ways that are usually too small to detect. Only by looking across billions of years, by comparing the physics of the early universe with today's physics, might we see these variations. And if the constants vary with a regular rhythm tied to the fold, we might be able to predict future variations, to test the folding hypothesis directly. Let me describe an imaginary experiment that might detect the fold. Imagine we could place synchronized atomic clocks throughout the solar system, on Earth, Mars, Jupiter's moons, in orbit around the Sun. These clocks would be the most precise timekeepers we can build, accurate to 1 part in 1019 or better. We would monitor these clocks continuously, looking for tiny variations in their rates that can't be explained by known effects like gravitational time dilation or relative motion. If the universe folds, different parts of the solar system might experience the fold slightly differently, might fold through higher dimensions at slightly different rates or angles. This could create tiny but measurable differences in how time flows at different locations. The pattern of these differences might reveal the geometry of the fold, might show us how our familiar three-dimensional space is embedded in higher dimensions. It would be like using the solar system as a giant detector for higher dimensional geometry. We might also look for variations in radioactive decay rates. Radioactive decay is supposed to be truly random, governed only by quantum mechanics, unaffected by external conditions. But some experiments have suggested that decay rates might vary slightly with the Earth's distance from the Sun, with solar activity, or with other factors. These variations are controversial and might be experimental artifacts, but what if they're real? What if radioactive decay is sensitive to the fold, to the local curvature of spacetime in higher dimensions? If this is true, we could use radioactive decay as a probe of the fold. By monitoring decay rates of different isotopes continuously over long periods, we might detect the rhythm of cosmic folding. Different isotopes might be sensitive to different aspects of the fold, some to the spatial curvature, others to the temporal distortion, still others to the strength of fundamental forces. By combining measurements from many isotopes, we might build up a detailed picture of how the fold affects the quantum realm. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence might also be influenced by the fold. We've been searching for radio signals from alien civilizations for decades, assuming that radio waves travel through empty space without distortion. But what if the fold affects electromagnetic radiation in ways that make interstellar communication more difficult? What if signals get scrambled or redirected during the fold, making it harder for civilizations to detect each other? Or perhaps it's the opposite. Perhaps advanced civilizations have learned to use the fold for communication, sending signals through the folded dimensions that travel faster than light through our three-dimensional space. What we interpret as the Great Silence, the apparent absence of alien signals despite the vast number of potentially habitable planets, might actually be because everyone else is communicating through the fold while we're still limited to ordinary electromagnetic radiation. The fold might be the cosmic internet, and we simply haven't figured out how to log on yet. Let us drift now into the realm of higher dimensions, those hidden directions in space that our three-dimensional minds struggle to visualize, but which mathematics suggest might be as real as the familiar directions of up and down, left and right, forward and backward. In these extra dimensions, the folding of the universe becomes not just possible but almost natural as folding a piece of paper is in our three-dimensional world. Here, in the abstract spaces described by string theory and M theory, by brain cosmology and the holographic principle, our cosmic folding finds a home, a framework where such an impossible-seeming idea begins to make a certain kind of sense. Imagine, if you can, that our entire universe, everything we can see and touch and measure, is actually a three-dimensional surface embedded in a higher dimensional space. We call this surface a brane, short for membrane, and it floats like a vast sheet in a space with 4, 5, 6, or even more spatial dimensions. We are confined to this brane, unable to move off it into the extra dimensions, like shadows confined to a wall, unable to step into the room. But while we can't leave our brane, it can move through the higher dimensional space, can ripple and fold and twist in ways we can only perceive indirectly. This isn't just wild speculation, it's a serious proposal in theoretical physics that might explain some of the deepest mysteries of our universe. Why is gravity so much weaker than the other fundamental forces? Perhaps because gravity, unlike the other forces, can propagate through the extra dimensions, diluting its strength in our three-dimensional brane. Why do we have the particular particles and forces we observe? Perhaps because they represent the specific vibration modes of our brain, like the harmonics of a cosmic drum. Why does the universe appear to have begun in a Big Bang? Perhaps because our brain collided with another brain in the higher dimensional space, creating the explosion of energy and matter we observe as the beginning of our universe. In this brain world scenario, the folding of the universe becomes much easier to envision. Just as a two-dimensional sheet of paper can easily fold through three-dimensional space, our three-dimensional brain can fold through four-dimensional space or higher. The fold doesn't require the distances within our brain to change, just as folding a piece of paper doesn't stretch or shrink the paper itself, but it brings different parts of the brain closer together in the higher dimensions. Points that are far apart along the surface of the brain might be brought close together through the bulk, the higher dimensional space in which our brain is embedded. String theory, our most ambitious attempt to unify all the forces of nature, requires extra dimensions to be mathematically consistent. In most versions of string theory, there are 10 or 11 dimensions total, our familiar 3 spatial dimensions plus time, and 6 or 7 extra spatial dimensions. These extra dimensions are usually assumed to be compactified, curled up so small that we can't detect them directly. They might be rolled up like tiny cylinders with circumferences smaller than an atom, or twisted into complex shapes called Calabi-Yau manifolds that determine the properties of particles and forces in our large dimensions. But what if these extra dimensions aren't always compactified in the same way? What if their shape and size change periodically, breathing in and out with a cosmic rhythm? During the day, in our thought experiment, the extra dimensions might be tightly curled, effectively hidden from our 3-dimensional experience. But during the night, during the fold, they might relax and expand, becoming large enough to allow different parts of our brain to approach each other through the bulk. This periodic decompactification and recompactification of extra dimensions could be the mechanism behind the cosmic folding we're imagining. The shape of these extra dimensions would determine how the fold occurs. If they're cylindrical, the fold might be like rolling our brain into a higher dimensional tube. If they're toroidal, like a donut, the fold might bring the opposite sides of our universe into contact, creating a kind of cosmic wraparound. If they're more complex, like a Calabi-Yau manifold, the fold might create intricate patterns of connection and disconnection, a higher dimensional origami of incredible complexity. Consider the possibility of parallel brains, other 3-dimensional universes floating near ours in the higher dimensional bulk. These parallel brains might have their own matter and energy, their own stars and galaxies, their own forms of life. Normally, these brains might be separated by vast distances in the extra dimensions, completely isolated from each other. But during the fold, when the extra dimensions change their configuration, these brains might approach each other, might even touch or intersect in certain regions. This could explain dark matter. Perhaps it's ordinary matter on a parallel brain, close to ours in the extra dimensions but invisible to our electromagnetic radiation. We feel its gravitational effects because gravity can propagate through the bulk, but we can't see it because light is confined to our brain. During the fold, when the brains come closer together, the gravitational influence of this parallel matter might become stronger, creating the dark matter halos we observe around galaxies. The fold might also allow for information, or even matter to transfer between brains under certain conditions. Perhaps at special points where the brains touch during maximum fold, quantum tunneling might allow particles to jump from one brain to another. This could be incredibly rare, requiring exactly the right conditions, but over cosmic time it might have significant effects. Some of the matter in our universe might have originated on other brains, bringing with it information about alternate realities, different physical laws, different possibilities for how matter and energy can organize themselves. Let's explore the concept of mirror symmetry in the context of the fold. In string theory, different Calabi-Yau manifolds can give rise to the same physics in our 4-dimensional spacetime. These pairs of manifolds are called mirror manifolds, and the symmetry between them has profound implications for our understanding of string theory. What if the fold involves a transition between mirror manifolds? What if, as the universe folds, the shape of the extra dimensions transforms from one Calabi-Yau manifold to its mirror partner? This mirror transition wouldn't change the physics we observe. The particles and forces would remain the same, but it might change how information is organized in the extra dimensions. It might be like looking at the universe in a mirror, where everything appears the same but reversed. During the fold, left might become right in the extra dimensions, even though we wouldn't notice any change in our 3-dimensional experience. This mirror folding might be why the universe can fold without disrupting the delicate structures of atoms and molecules, stars and planets, life and consciousness. The holographic principle adds another layer to our understanding of the fold. This principle, inspired by black hole physics, suggests that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on the boundary of that space. In the context of our universe, This might mean that everything we experience as three-dimensional reality is actually encoded on a two-dimensional surface at the edge of the universe. We are, in a sense, holograms, three-dimensional projections of information stored on a distant boundary. If the holographic principle is correct, then the fold might be understood as a reorganization of information on this boundary surface. Imagine the boundary as a vast screen displaying the holographic movie that is our universe. During the day, the information is organized one way, projecting the extended, unfolded universe we're familiar with. During the night, the information reorganizes, creating a different projection where distances are compressed and connections are enhanced. The fold might be less like a physical bending of space and more like changing the holographic encoding, switching between different ways of representing the same fundamental information. This holographic understanding of the fold could explain why it doesn't disrupt local physics. Just as changing the encoding of a hologram doesn't change the image it projects when viewed correctly, changing the holographic encoding of the universe might not change the local physics we observe. We would still see atoms and molecules behaving normally, planets still orbiting stars, galaxies still rotating. But the global structure of space-time, the connections between distant regions, the flow of information through the cosmos, all of this might be profoundly different during the fold. Let's consider the role of supersymmetry in the cosmic fold. Supersymmetry is a proposed symmetry between fermions, matter particles, and bosons, force particles, suggesting that every particle has a superpartner with different spin characteristics. We haven't detected any superpartners yet, which has led some physicists to doubt whether supersymmetry exists. But what if superpartners only exist during the fold? What if the folding of extra dimensions allows supersymmetry to manifest, creating temporary superpartners that mediate new kinds of interactions? During the cosmic night, in our imagination, electrons might gain selectron superpartners, quarks might gain squark superpartners, photons might gain photino superpartners. These superpartners might facilitate the flow of information through the folded dimensions, might allow matter and energy to take shortcuts through the bulk, might enable forms of communication and interaction that are impossible in the unfolded state. When the universe unfolds with the cosmic dawn, these superpartners might disappear, or become so massive that they are effectively removed from our low-energy physics. This periodic appearance and disappearance of supersymmetry could have profound effects on the evolution of the universe. During the folded supersymmetric phase, the vacuum energy of space might be exactly zero, solving the cosmological constant problem. During the unfolded phase, supersymmetry breaking might generate the small positive vacuum energy we observe as dark energy. The fold might be the universe's way of balancing these two states, maintaining a cosmic equilibrium between supersymmetric and non-supersymmetric phases. The anthropic principle, the observation that the universe seems fine-tuned for the existence of life, might also be related to the fold. Perhaps the constants of nature that seem so precisely calibrated for life are actually average values that emerge from the periodic folding and unfolding. During each fold, the constants might vary slightly, exploring different values, different possibilities. Over many cycles, the universe might naturally settle into values that allow for stable structures, complex chemistry, and ultimately life. This wouldn't require any conscious fine-tuning or divine intervention. It would be a natural consequence of the fold, like how a repeatedly folded piece of paper naturally develops certain crease patterns. The universe might be constantly experimenting with different configurations during the fold, and we exist in one of the configurations that happens to allow for our existence. Other regions of the universe, or other brains in the multiverse, might have settled into different patterns, different constants, different forms of physics that don't support life as we know it. Let's delve into the mathematics of the fold, using the language of differential geometry and topology. In mathematical terms, our universe might be described as a Riemannian manifold, a curved space with a metric that determines distances and angles. The fold would be a time-dependent transformation of this manifold, a diffeomorphism that preserves local structure while changing global topology. The extra dimensions might be described as a fiber bundle, with our three-dimensional space as the base manifold and the compact extra dimensions as the fibers. During the fold, the fibers might undergo what mathematicians call a monodromy, a transformation that occurs when you travel around a closed loop. Imagine walking around the equator of Earth and finding that, when you return to your starting point, You've been subtly transformed. Perhaps your quantum phase has shifted, or your spin has flipped. This kind of monodromy in the extra dimensions during the fold could explain some of the mysterious properties of quantum mechanics, like the Berry phase that particles acquire when their parameters are slowly cycled. The fold might also involve changes in the cohomology of spacetime, the mathematical structure that describes how different dimensional subspaces fit together. During the unfolded state, spacetime might have trivial cohomology, with no interesting topological features, but during the fold, non-trivial cohomology might emerge, creating wormholes, handles, and other topological structures that connect distant regions. These structures might be temporary, existing only during the maximum fold, but they could allow for phenomena that seem impossible in our ordinary experience. Consider the possibility that consciousness itself might be connected to these higher dimensional structures. Some theories of consciousness, like orchestrated objective reduction proposed by Penrose and Hameroff, suggest that consciousness emerges from quantum processes in the brain that are influenced by the fundamental structure of spacetime. If spacetime folds through extra dimensions, consciousness might fold too, gaining access to information and perspectives that are normally hidden. During dreams, when our ordinary consciousness is suspended, we might be more sensitive to the folded state of the universe. The bizarre logic of dreams, where time flows non-linearly, where we can be in multiple places at once, where the impossible becomes commonplace. All of this might reflect the actual structure of reality during the fold. Our sleeping brains might be picking up on the higher dimensional geometry, translating it into the symbolic language of dreams, the universal themes that appear in dreams across all cultures. Flying, falling, being chased, meeting the deceased might be archetypal experiences of the folded universe. The fold might also play a role in quantum computing and quantum information. Quantum computers leverage superposition and entanglement to perform calculations that would be impossible for classical computers. But decoherence, the loss of quantum coherence due to environmental interaction, limits the power of quantum computers. What if the fold provides a natural protection against decoherence? What if quantum information is more stable during the folded state, when different parts of the universe are more strongly connected through higher dimensions? This could explain why some biological systems seem to maintain quantum coherence longer than expected. Photosynthesis, for example, involves quantum effects that persist in warm, wet, noisy conditions where they should quickly decohere. Perhaps life has evolved to take advantage of the fold, timing critical quantum processes to coincide with the folded state when quantum information is naturally protected. The efficiency of photosynthesis, the sensitivity of vision, the mystery of consciousness, all might depend on life's ability to surf the cosmic fold. Let me paint a picture of how advanced civilizations might use the fold. Imagine a civilization that has discovered the rhythm of cosmic folding and learned to synchronize their technology with it. During the day, when the universe is unfolded, they might focus on local activities, manufacturing, computation, cultural activities. But as night approaches and the fold begins, they might activate technologies that leverage the changing geometry of spacetime. They might have communication devices that send signals through the folded dimensions, achieving faster-than-light communication without violating relativity. They might have transportation systems that ride the fold, taking shortcuts through higher dimensions to travel vast distances instantly. They might have computers that use the fold to access parallel processing power from other brains, solving problems that would be intractable in a single universe. The fold might be the key to becoming a truly cosmic civilization, able to transcend the limitations of three-dimensional space. But perhaps the most profound use of the fold would be for exploration and discovery. During the maximum fold, when all parts of the universe are connected through higher dimensions, an advanced civilization might be able to survey the entire cosmos simultaneously. They might map the distribution of matter and energy, catalogue the locations of life-bearing worlds, even make contact with civilizations on other branes. The fold might be the universe's way of allowing its conscious inhabitants to know it fully, to see it from all perspectives, to understand its deepest nature. This brings us to a profound question. Is the fold something that happens to the universe, or is it something the universe does? Is it a passive mechanical process, like the tides caused by gravitational forces? Or is it an active, purposeful process, like breathing or thinking? If consciousness plays a role in the fold, if life and intelligence influence how spacetime curves through higher dimensions, then the fold might be better understood as a cosmic behavior rather than a cosmic phenomenon. Perhaps the universe folds because it needs to, because maintaining coherence across such vast scales requires periodic reconnection, periodic synchronization. Perhaps the fold is how the universe maintains its identity, how it remains a single unified entity despite its enormous size and complexity. Perhaps we, as conscious beings within the universe, are not just observers of the fold, but participants in it, our awareness contributing to the cosmic rhythm that keeps reality coherent. There is something about the night that has always whispered to humanity of other possibilities, other worlds, other ways of being. Long before we had telescopes to peer into the cosmic darkness, long before we understood that stars were distant suns and galaxies were islands of light in an ocean of space, we knew that night was different, that darkness brought not just an absence of light but a presence of something else, something that daylight held at bay. Every culture throughout history has developed myths and stories about the night, about what happens when the sun sets and familiar world transforms into something strange and full of possibility. Perhaps these stories, these deep human intuitions about the nature of night, are not just projections of our fears and fantasies, but genuine perceptions of the cosmic fold, filtered through the lens of human consciousness and translated into the language of myth and dream. Think about how universal certain nighttime experiences are across all human cultures. The feeling that the world becomes smaller and more intimate after dark, that distant things draw nearer, that the boundaries between self and world become more permeable, the experience of dreams where the normal rules of space and time don't apply, where we can fly, where we can be in multiple places at once, where we meet those who have died, where past and future intermingle freely. The sense that night is when magic happens, when transformations occur, when the impossible becomes possible. These experiences are so common, so deeply embedded in human consciousness that we rarely question them. We simply accept that night and day are fundamentally different, not just in terms of illumination, but in terms of the very nature of reality. What if these universal human experiences are actually accurate perceptions of the cosmic fold? What if our ancestors, unburdened by modern scientific skepticism, were more attuned to the subtle changes that occur when the universe folds? What if myths and legends, fairy tales and ghost stories, religious visions and shamanic journeys are all attempts to describe experiences of the folded universe, translated into the symbolic language that human consciousness uses to make sense of experiences that transcend ordinary reality? Consider the widespread belief in a spirit world, a realm that exists parallel to our physical world, but is normally invisible and inaccessible. Nearly every culture has some version of this belief. The Celtic otherworld, the Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime, the Hindu and Buddhist concept of multiple planes of existence, the shamanic upper and lower worlds, the Christian heaven and hell. These spirit worlds are typically described as being both infinitely far away and intimately close, separated from our world by the thinnest of veils that becomes more permeable at certain times and places. What if these spirit worlds are intuitive descriptions of parallel branes in higher dimensional space? During the day, when the universe is unfolded, these branes are separated by vast distances in the extra dimensions, completely inaccessible to us. But during the night, when the universe folds, the branes draw closer together. The veil between worlds becomes thinner. Sensitive individuals might perceive influences from these parallel branes, patterns of energy, information, perhaps even consciousness itself that bleeds through from one brane to another during the fold. This could explain why spiritual and paranormal experiences so often occur at night, or in the liminal times of dawn and dusk, when the fold might be beginning or ending. It could explain why certain places are considered sacred or haunted. They might be locations where the fold is particularly strong, where the boundary between branes is especially thin. It could explain why meditation and other consciousness-altering practices often produce experiences of other realms. These practices might attune consciousness to the folded dimensions, allowing perception of what is always there but usually hidden. Dreams deserve special attention in our exploration of the fold. Every night as we surrender to sleep, our consciousness undergoes a profound transformation. The linear logical thought of waking life gives way to the fluid, associative logic of dreams. We accept impossible things without question. We experience time non-linearly, with past, present, and future intermingling. We find ourselves in places that are simultaneously familiar and strange, that combine elements from different locations and different periods of our lives. We encounter people who are themselves but also someone else, who are alive but also dead, who speak without words and communicate meanings that transcend language. These dream experiences map remarkably well onto what we might expect consciousness to experience during a cosmic fold. If the universe really does fold through higher dimensions, bringing distant regions into proximity, creating connections that transcend normal space-time, then dreams might be our most direct experience of this folded reality. The sleeping brain, freed from the need to navigate three-dimensional space and linear time, might naturally attune to the higher dimensional geometry of the fold. Consider the common dream of flying. Across all cultures, people dream of soaring through the air, moving through space without the normal constraints of gravity and solid matter. What if this reflects the actual experience of consciousness during the fold, when movement through higher dimensions becomes possible? The sensation of flying in dreams might be our brain's interpretation of consciousness, navigating the folded dimensions, taking shortcuts through the bulk that would be impossible in our normal three-dimensional experience. Or consider the equally common experience of meeting deceased loved ones in dreams. Nearly everyone who has lost someone close to them has had dreams where that person appears, often seeming completely real and present, sometimes conveying messages or comfort. Our scientific worldview dismisses these as wish fulfillment or processing of grief, but what if they represent something more? What if consciousness, or information patterns that we identify as consciousness, can persist in the folded dimensions after physical death? What if dreams of the deceased are genuine encounters made possible by the cosmic fold? The phenomenon of precognitive dreams, where people dream of events before they happen, might also be related to the fold. If time folds along with space, if past and future can influence each other through higher dimensions, then information about future events might sometimes flow backward through the fold. This wouldn't violate causality in the strict sense. The future wouldn't be fixed and unchangeable, but it might allow for probabilistic glimpses of likely futures, especially futures that are emotionally significant or that involve strong patterns that resonate through the folded dimensions. Let's explore how different cultural traditions might have encoded knowledge of the fold in their mythologies and practices. The Hindu concept of the cosmic cycles of creation and destruction, the days and nights of Brahma, describes the universe as going through periodic phases of manifestation and dissolution. During the day of Brahma, the universe is manifest, extended, full of activity and differentiation. During the night of Brahma, the universe withdraws into itself, dissolves back into undifferentiated potential. This maps beautifully onto our concept of the universe folding and unfolding, extending during the cosmic day and folding during the cosmic night. The Chinese concept of yin and yang might also reflect an intuitive understanding of the fold. Yang represents the active, expanding, differentiating principle, the unfolded universe. Yin represents the passive, contracting, unifying principle, the folded universe. The famous yin-yang symbol, with each half containing a seed of the other, might represent how the folded and unfolded states are not completely separate but interpenetrate, each containing the potential for transformation into the other. Indigenous Australian Aboriginal cultures speak of the dream time, a realm where linear time doesn't exist, where all moments exist simultaneously, where the landscape itself is alive with meaning and story. They believe that in the dream time the creative ancestors formed the world, and that the dream time continues to exist parallel to our ordinary reality, accessible through dreams, ceremonies, and sacred sites. This sounds remarkably like a description of the folded universe, where time becomes non-linear, where all points in space are connected, where consciousness and cosmos are unified. The Celtic tradition speaks of thin places, locations where the boundary between this world and the other world is particularly permeable. These might be ancient stone circles, holy wells, certain forests or mountains. People visiting these places report experiences of timelessness, of enhanced perception, of contact with other realms. What if these thin places are locations where the cosmic fold is particularly pronounced? What if ancient peoples, through generations of observation and experience, identified the places where the geometry of spacetime creates natural portals between dimensions? Even our modern urban legends and contemporary mythology might reflect experiences of the fold, stories of missing time where people can't account for hours or even days, reports of places where the laws of physics seem different, gravity hills where things roll upward, zones where compasses spin wildly, roads where distances seem to change, the Bermuda Triangle and other vortex locations where ships and planes supposedly disappear. While many of these have conventional explanations or are simply fiction, the persistence and universality of such stories suggest they might be expressing a deeper truth about the variable nature of spacetime. Let me share a personal reflection on the nighttime transformation of consciousness. Have you ever noticed how different your mind feels as you prepare for sleep? How thoughts that seemed urgent and important during the day suddenly seem less significant? How problems that appeared unsolvable suddenly reveal solutions? How creative ideas emerge from nowhere? This isn't just fatigue or the relaxation of mental defenses, it might be your consciousness beginning to resonate with the cosmic fold, beginning to access the different geometry of thought that becomes available when the universe draws into itself. The practice of keeping a dream journal reveals patterns that might reflect the rhythm of the fold. People who regularly record their dreams often notice cycles, periods when dreams are particularly vivid and meaningful, followed by periods when dreams are mundane or hard to remember. These cycles don't always correspond to personal stress or life events. They might be tracking the cosmic rhythm, times when the fold is stronger or weaker, when the connection to higher dimensions is more or less accessible. Children seem particularly attuned to the folded dimensions. They accept the reality of imaginary friends, have vivid dreams that they sometimes can't distinguish from waking life, and experience the world with a fluidity that adults have learned to suppress. What if children haven't yet learned to filter out perceptions of the fold? What if their imaginary friends are glimpses of consciousness from parallel brains? What if their natural acceptance of magic and transformation reflects an accurate perception of how reality operates during the cosmic fold? As we grow older and become socialized into consensus reality, we learn to ignore or rationalize away experiences that don't fit the accepted worldview. We're taught that dreams are just dreams, that imagination is separate from reality, that consciousness is produced by the brain and ends with death. But what if this socialization actually disconnects us from a deeper truth? What if the cosmic fold is always accessible, but we've trained ourselves not to perceive it? Artists and creative individuals often seem to maintain greater access to folded dimensions. They speak of inspiration coming from outside themselves, of being channels for something greater, of entering flow states where time disappears and creation happens almost automatically. What if artistic inspiration is actually information flowing through the folded dimensions? What if the muse that poets invoke is real, not a supernatural being, but the enhanced connectivity of consciousness during the fold? Musicians, in particular, might be working directly with the mathematics of the fold. Music is fundamentally about ratios and relationships, about harmony and resonance, about patterns that repeat and transform. The same mathematical structures that describe vibrating strings in music theory also appear in string theory's description of fundamental particles. When a musician creates a beautiful melody or harmony, they might be unconsciously modeling the geometric relationships of the folded dimensions, translating higher dimensional mathematics into sound. The experience of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random, might be another sign of the fold. When you think of someone and they call, when you need something and it appears, when events align in ways that seem impossibly orchestrated, you might be experiencing the enhanced connectivity of the folded universe. During the fold, patterns that are normally separated by space and time can resonate with each other, creating correlations that seem miraculous from our limited perspective, but are natural consequences of the universe's higher dimensional geometry. Let's consider how the fold might influence human health and well-being. Many healing traditions emphasize the importance of sleep and dreams for physical and mental health. What if this is because the fold provides access to healing energies or information that isn't available during the unfolded state? What if the body uses the folded dimensions to repair itself, to reset its patterns, to clear out the accumulated stresses of three-dimensional existence? The circadian rhythm disorders we mentioned earlier might be more than just misaligned biological clocks. People with these disorders often report not just sleep problems, but also experiences of altered consciousness, enhanced creativity, and sensitivity to subtle energies. They might be naturally attuned to a different folding rhythm, perhaps one that matches the cosmic fold more closely than Earth's 24-hour day. Their difficulty functioning in normal society might reflect the challenge of living according to one rhythm while being attuned to another. Mental health conditions might also be influenced by the fold. Conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and certain forms of autism involve altered perceptions of reality, unusual patterns of thought, and sometimes experiences that psychiatry labels as hallucinations or delusions. But what if some of these experiences are actually perceptions of the folded dimensions? What if these individuals are more sensitive to the cosmic fold but lack the cultural framework or support to integrate these perceptions in a healthy way? This isn't to romanticize mental illness, or suggest that all psychiatric symptoms are spiritual experiences. Mental suffering is real and often requires medical treatment. But it might mean that our understanding of consciousness and its variations is incomplete, that what we label as pathology might sometimes be an inability to navigate between folded and unfolded states of consciousness, or an overwhelming sensitivity to dimensions of reality that most people have learned to ignore. The practice of meditation offers a controlled way to explore consciousness during the fold. Advanced meditators report experiences of timelessness, of unity with all existence, of access to information beyond their personal knowledge. They describe states where the boundaries of self dissolve, where consciousness seems to expand beyond the body, where past and future become accessible. These experiences match remarkably well with what we might expect during the cosmic fold, when consciousness can extend through higher dimensions and access information from across space and time. Different meditation traditions might be techniques for accessing different aspects of the fold. Concentration practices might stabilize consciousness during the turbulence of folding and unfolding. Mindfulness practices might increase sensitivity to the subtle changes that occur during the fold. Loving-kindness practices might help consciousness resonate with the universal connectivity that emerges during maximum fold. Each tradition might have discovered different ways to surf the cosmic rhythm, to maintain awareness while reality transforms around and within us. Prayer, across all religious traditions, often occurs at the boundaries of day and night. Dawn prayers, evening prayers, midnight vigils. This timing might not be arbitrary. These might be the moments when the fold is beginning or ending, when the boundary between dimensions is most permeable, when consciousness can most easily extend beyond the personal and connect with the transpersonal or divine. The feeling of presence that many people experience during deep prayer, the sense of being heard, of not being alone, might reflect genuine contact with consciousness in other dimensions, made possible by the fold. Sacred architecture might be designed to amplify the effects of the fold. Ancient temples, stone circles, pyramids, and cathedrals often incorporate specific geometries, alignments, and proportions that create unique acoustic and energetic environments. These structures might be more than symbolic. They might be functional technologies for focusing the effects of the cosmic fold. The sacred geometries found in these buildings, the golden ratio, the vesica piscis, the flower of life, might be two-dimensional projections of higher dimensional relationships that become active during the fold. Pilgrimage sites around the world often share certain characteristics. They're located in geographically unique places, they've been considered sacred for millennia, and people report profound experiences there that they can't quite explain. What if these sites are located at nodes in the cosmic fold, places where the geometry of space-time creates natural amplification of higher dimensional effects? The journey of pilgrimage itself, the act of travelling to these places with intention and openness, might prepare consciousness to perceive and benefit from the enhanced connectivity available at these cosmic crossroads. Even our modern technology might be unconsciously designed to work with the fold. The internet, for example, creates a kind of artificial fold in information space, allowing instant connection between distant points, enabling the emergence of collective intelligence, breaking down the barriers of space and time that normally limit communication. Virtual reality creates folded spaces where the normal rules don't apply, where we can fly, transform, and experience impossible things. Artificial intelligence might be approaching the kind of distributed, non-local consciousness that naturally emerges during the cosmic fold. As we develop quantum computers, we might be building machines that can directly access the folded dimensions. Quantum computers leverage superposition and entanglement, phenomena that might be naturally enhanced during the fold. As these machines become more sophisticated, they might begin to detect the rhythm of cosmic folding, to synchronize their operations with it, to use it for computation and communication. We might discover that the most powerful computers aren't those we build, but those that emerge from the universe's own folding dynamics. Out there in the darkness between worlds, floating in the vast silence of space, our mechanical ambassadors maintain their patient vigil. The Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, the countless satellites and probes we've sent to explore our cosmic neighborhood. They are our extended senses, our eyes in the dark watching the universe with a constancy and precision that human observers could never achieve. And if the universe truly folds in the way we've been imagining, if space itself breathes with a rhythm we haven't yet recognized, then these instruments might already be recording the evidence, capturing data that contains the signature of the fold, waiting only for us to ask the right questions, to look at their observations through the lens of our cosmic folding hypothesis. Picture the James Webb Space Telescope, that magnificent origami of gold-plated mirrors and delicate instruments, floating at the second Lagrange point, 1.5 million kilometers from Earth. It sits in a gravitational balance point where the pull of Earth and Sun combine to hold it in a stable position relative to our planet. From there, shielded from the Sun's glare and Earth's heat, it peers into the deepest reaches of space and time, collecting ancient light that has travelled for billions of years to reach its mirrors. Every photon it captures has journeyed through the cosmic fold countless times, has been subtly influenced by each folding and unfolding of space it encountered along its path. The telescope doesn't know it might be witnessing the universe's secret breathing. It simply collects light, measures spectra, records images with patient electronic precision. But within that data, patterns might be hiding, subtle variations in the redshift of distant galaxies that don't quite match our predictions. Mysterious alignments in the cosmic web that suggest an underlying order we haven't recognized. Periodic fluctuations in the brightness of certain stars that can't be explained by known stellar processes. The telescope watches, records, transmits its findings back to Earth, where the data waits in vast digital archives for someone to notice the rhythm of the fold. Consider what these space-based observers might experience during a cosmic fold if our thought experiment corresponds to reality. As space begins to fold through higher dimensions, the telescopes would fold with it. They're part of the universe, after all, not separate from it. But their precise instruments might detect subtle changes that we ground-based observers miss. Perhaps the cosmic microwave background radiation shifts slightly in temperature or polarization. Perhaps the distances to certain reference stars appear to fluctuate in ways that can't be explained by parallax or proper motion. Perhaps the rate of atomic clocks aboard satellites drifts in patterns that don't match the predictions of general relativity. The Voyager spacecraft, humanity's most distant emissaries, are particularly interesting in the context of the fold. Voyager 1 and 2 have left the solar system, entering interstellar space where the sun's influence fades and the broader currents of the galaxy take over. They're so far from Earth that their signals take over 20 hours to reach us, whispers from the edge of human exploration. If the fold affects different regions of space differently, if there are waves or gradients in the folding that propagate through the cosmos, the Voyagers might be experiencing a different phase of the fold than we are on Earth. Imagine if the Voyagers' instruments could detect the fold directly. Their old computers and limited sensors weren't designed for such observations, but perhaps the fold leaves traces in their data anyway. Anomalous readings in their magnetometers as the magnetic field of space itself shifts during the fold. Unexpected variations in the cosmic ray flux as particles take shortcuts through folded dimensions. Tiny but persistent errors in their navigation that accumulate in patterns we haven't recognized. The Voyagers continue their journey into the dark, carrying golden records with sounds and images of Earth, but also perhaps carrying in their data streams the first evidence of the universe's hidden rhythm. The LIGO and Virgo gravitational wave observatories represent our newest sense, our ability to feel the universe vibrate as massive objects accelerate through space. These incredibly sensitive instruments can detect changes in distance smaller than a proton's width, measuring how space itself stretches and squeezes as gravitational waves pass through. They've detected the merger of black holes billions of light years away, confirming Einstein's predictions and opening an entirely new window on the cosmos. But what if LIGO and Virgo are also detecting something else? something we haven't recognized because we haven't been looking for it. The fold would create its own gravitational signatures, its own patterns of spatial distortion. As the universe folds through higher dimensions, our three-dimensional space would experience stresses and strains that might manifest as a kind of gravitational wave background. Not the sharp chirps of merging black holes, but a gentle, continuous hum at frequencies we haven't been analysing carefully. This gravitational signature of the fold might be hiding in what we dismiss as noise. Every gravitational wave detector has to deal with countless sources of interference, seismic vibrations, thermal fluctuations, quantum noise in the lasers. Scientists work incredibly hard to eliminate or account for these noise sources, to extract the genuine gravitational wave signals from the background. But what if some of that noise is actually signal? What if buried in the data we discard is evidence of the universe's breathing, too regular to be random, too subtle to be noticed unless we're specifically looking for it? Let me paint a picture of how our observatories might appear from a cosmic perspective during the fold. Imagine you could see through higher dimensions, watch as our three-dimensional space curves and folds like a vast sheet in a gentle breeze. You would see Earth, a tiny blue sphere, with its constellation of artificial satellites orbiting like a cloud of metallic butterflies. As the fold begins, you would see these satellites not moving through space, but carried along as space itself transforms. The Moon would seem to draw closer to Earth not by moving, but by the space between them folding. Mars, Jupiter, the outer planets would all shift in the higher dimensions while maintaining their three-dimensional orbits. The telescopes, both ground-based and space-based, would continue their observations, but the light they receive would be taking different paths through the folded space. A photon from a distant galaxy that would normally travel in a straight line might now follow a curved path through the higher dimensions, arriving at the telescope from a slightly different direction, with a slightly different energy, carrying information not just about its source, but about the geometry of space it travelled through. Each telescope would be receiving a slightly different view of the universe, not because they're looking at different things, but because the fold creates multiple paths for light to travel. Our radio telescopes, vast dishes that listen to the whispers of the cosmos, might be particularly sensitive to the fold. Radio waves, with their long wavelengths, might interact with the folded dimensions differently than visible light. The mysterious fast radio bursts that we've recently discovered, intense pulses of radio emission that last only milliseconds, might be related to the fold. Perhaps they're signals from other civilizations that have learned to use the fold for communication, broadcasting through the higher dimensions when the geometry is just right. Or perhaps they're natural phenomena, cosmic lighthouses marking the nodes where space folds most strongly. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence takes on new dimensions when we consider the fold. SETI has been listening for decades, scanning the sky for artificial signals that would indicate the presence of technological civilizations, but we've been assuming that alien signals would travel through normal three-dimensional space, taking years or centuries to cross interstellar distances. What if advanced civilizations communicate through the fold instead? What if they've discovered how to send signals through the higher dimensions, achieving instantaneous or faster-than-light communication? This could explain the Great Silence, the puzzling absence of obvious alien signals despite the vast number of potentially habitable planets. Perhaps we're like someone with a radio trying to intercept internet communications. We have the wrong technology, we're looking in the wrong dimension. The universe might be buzzing with conversations carried through the fold, a cosmic internet that we haven't learned to access. Our telescopes and radio dishes might be picking up fragments of these communications, but we interpret them as noise or natural phenomena because we don't understand their higher dimensional encoding. The fold might also affect how we interpret the observations we're already making. Take the expansion of the universe, for example. We measure this expansion by observing how fast galaxies are moving away from us, using their redshift as a cosmic speedometer. But if space is folding and unfolding, this would add another component to the redshift. Light from a galaxy might be redshifted, not just because the galaxy is moving away, but also because it passed through regions of space that were folding or unfolding as the light travelled through them. This could help explain some of the tensions in our cosmological measurements. Different methods of measuring the expansion rate give slightly different results, a discrepancy that has puzzled astronomers for years. Perhaps these different methods are sampling different aspects of the fold. measurements based on the cosmic microwave background integrate over the entire history of the universe, averaging over countless folding cycles. Measurements based on nearby supernovae sample more recent times, perhaps catching the universe in a particular phase of its folding rhythm. Dark energy, that mysterious force accelerating the universe's expansion, might be intimately connected to the fold. What if dark energy isn't constant but varies with the folding cycle? During the unfolded state, dark energy might be stronger, pushing space to expand. During the folded state, it might weaken or even reverse, allowing gravity to slow or stop the expansion temporarily. Over cosmic time, this cycling of dark energy could create an expansion history very different from our current models, one that pulses with the rhythm of the fold. Our neutrino observatories, buried deep underground or embedded in Antarctic ice, might be detecting hints of the fold that we haven't recognized. Neutrinos are ghostly particles that barely interact with matter, passing through Earth as if it weren't there. But they might interact more strongly with the folded dimensions, carrying information about the higher dimensional structure of space. The occasional anomalous neutrino event, the ones that don't fit our models of stellar fusion or cosmic ray interactions, might be neutrinos that have taken shortcuts through the fold, arriving with energies or from directions that seem impossible in three-dimensional space. Let's imagine a future observatory specifically designed to detect the fold. It would need to be distributed across space, with synchronized detectors at Earth, the Moon, Mars, and the outer planets. Each detector would contain atomic clocks accurate to 1 part in 10 or 20, gravitational wave sensors sensitive to the lowest possible frequencies, and quantum entanglement experiments that could detect variations in non-local correlations. The entire array would work together, looking for coordinated variations that couldn't be explained by known physics. This fold observatory would need to operate for years, perhaps decades, to build up enough data to see the pattern. The fold might have a period of days, years, or even centuries in our time. It might be irregular, influenced by the distribution of matter and consciousness in the universe. It might be so gentle that its effects are buried in the noise of other cosmic phenomena. But with patience and precision, we might finally detect the universe's heartbeat, the rhythm that underlies all of existence. The data from such an observatory would revolutionize our understanding of cosmology. We would need new mathematics to describe the folding, new physics to explain how it works, new philosophy to understand what it means. The discovery of the fold would be as significant as the discovery that Earth orbits the Sun, that the universe is expanding, that space and time are relative. It would show us that the cosmos is far stranger and more wonderful than we imagined, that there are still profound mysteries waiting to be discovered. But perhaps we don't need to wait for future observatories. Perhaps the evidence is already there in the data we've collected, waiting for someone to look at it with fresh eyes, to ask new questions, to consider possibilities we've dismissed as too strange. Every image from Hubble and James Webb, every gravitational wave detection from LIGO and Virgo, every neutrino event from IceCube and Super Kamiokande might contain whispers of the fold. We just need to learn how to listen. As I contemplate these mechanical eyes we've placed in the darkness, I'm struck by the beauty of human curiosity, our determination to understand the universe despite our tiny size and brief existence. Each telescope, each spacecraft, each detector represents thousands of people working together, pooling their intelligence and creativity to extend our senses beyond the limitations of biology. We've built eyes that can see across billions of light years, ears that can hear the vibrations of space itself, minds of silicon and electricity that can process data faster than any human brain. And yet, for all our technological prowess, we might still be missing something fundamental. The fold, if it exists, would be so gentle, so pervasive, so woven into the fabric of reality, that detecting it would be like a fish discovering water. It's everywhere, it's always been there. But because we evolved within it, we might not notice it until we specifically look for it. Our instruments, magnificent as they are, were designed to measure a universe we assume doesn't fold. To detect the fold, we might need not just better instruments, but a different way of thinking about what we're looking for. Now we arrive at perhaps the deepest question our thought experiment raises. If the universe folds in half every night, what does this mean for consciousness, for meaning, for our understanding of our place in the cosmic order? This isn't just a question of physics or cosmology. It's a question that touches the very heart of what it means to be aware, to be alive, to be part of something infinitely larger than ourselves. The fold, as we've imagined it, isn't just a rearrangement of space and time, it's a fundamental reconnection of all things, a cosmic reminder that separation is an illusion, and unity is the deeper truth. Consider what consciousness might actually be in a folding universe. We typically think of consciousness as something generated by our brains, confined to our skulls, separate from the consciousness of others and from the unconscious matter around us. But what if consciousness is more like a field that permeates the universe, and our brains are receivers that tune into this field, focusing it into the experience of individual awareness? During the fold, when all points in space are brought into connection through higher dimensions, this field of consciousness might become more unified, more accessible, more shared. This isn't to say that we lose our individuality during the fold, that we merge into some undifferentiated cosmic soup. Rather, imagine that consciousness during the fold is like a vast symphony, where every individual is an instrument. During the day, when the universe is unfolded, each instrument plays its own melody, barely able to hear the others over the vast distances of space. But during the night, when the universe folds, all the instruments are brought into the same concert hall. Suddenly, what were isolated melodies become harmonies. Individual consciousness remains distinct but becomes part of a larger pattern, a cosmic composition that no single awareness could create alone. This symphonic model of consciousness during the fold might explain experiences that mystics and meditators have reported throughout history. The sense of unity with all existence, the feeling of boundless love and compassion, the direct knowledge of truths that can't be put into words, these might be glimpses of consciousness during the folded state, moments when individual awareness briefly attunes to the cosmic symphony. The fold doesn't create these experiences. It reveals what's always there but usually hidden by the apparent separation of three-dimensional space. Think about what this means for empathy and compassion. During the unfolded day, we experience others as separate from ourselves. Their pain is not our pain, their joy is not our joy, except through the indirect bridge of emotional resonance. But during the fold, the boundaries between self and other might become more permeable. We might directly experience, at some deep level below conscious awareness, the feelings and thoughts of others. This could be why sleep is so important for emotional regulation and social bonding. It's when we reconnect with the shared field of consciousness, when we remember at a cellular level that we're all part of the same cosmic process. The fold might also illuminate the nature of love, that mysterious force that draws conscious beings together across all barriers. What if love is the emotional experience of recognizing our fundamental unity, of feeling the connections that exist in the folded dimensions even when we're separated in three-dimensional space? When we fall in love, when we feel deep connection with another person, we might be unconsciously perceiving the higher dimensional proximity that the fold reveals. Love might be consciousness recognizing itself in another, remembering that separation is an illusion created by the unfolded state of the universe. This extends beyond human relationships to our connection with all of life, with Earth itself, with the cosmos as a whole. The ecological insight that everything is interconnected, that damage to one part of the system affects the whole, might be more than metaphor. During the fold, the web of connections that links all living things might become more active, more influential. The health of a forest on one continent might directly affect the weather patterns on another, not just through atmospheric circulation, but through connections in folded space. The extinction of a species might send ripples through dimensions we can't perceive, affecting the stability of ecosystems everywhere. Indigenous peoples have long understood this interconnection, speaking of the web of life, the spirit that moves through all things, the responsibility we have to future generations and to the Earth itself. Perhaps their worldviews, developed over thousands of years of careful observation and deep relationship with the natural world, are more accurate than our mechanistic models. Perhaps they've always known about the fold, not in scientific terms but in the language of spirit and story, ritual and relationship. Let's explore what the fold might mean for the question of purpose and meaning in the universe. In our current scientific worldview, the universe often seems purposeless, a vast machine running according to blind physical laws, with life and consciousness as accidental byproducts that will eventually disappear in the heat death of the cosmos. But if the universe folds, if consciousness plays a role in this folding, then perhaps the cosmos has a kind of purpose we haven't recognized. Perhaps the universe folds because it needs to maintain coherence across its vast scales. Perhaps consciousness evolved not by accident, but because the universe needs observers, needs awareness to complete the cosmic circuit. Perhaps we're not just passive observers, but active participants in the universe's self-organization, our consciousness contributing to the patterns that guide the fold. In this view, life and awareness aren't accidents, but necessary features of a self-organizing cosmos, as fundamental as matter and energy. This doesn't require any external designer or divine intervention. The universe might be self-organizing, self-aware, self-evolving through the mechanism of the fold. Each conscious being, from the simplest bacterium to the most advanced civilization, might contribute to this cosmic self-awareness. Our thoughts, dreams, and experiences might not just be personal events, but contributions to the universe's ongoing process of knowing itself, organizing itself, evolving toward greater complexity and awareness. The fold might also shed light on the nature of creativity and innovation. Where do new ideas come from? How do artists create works that seem to transcend their individual experience? How do scientists make leaps of intuition that lead to breakthrough discoveries? Perhaps during the fold, consciousness can access information and patterns from across the universe, from other times, from parallel dimensions. The muse that artists invoke might be real, not a supernatural being, but the enhanced connectivity of consciousness during the fold. This could explain why so many discoveries and inventions occur independently to multiple people around the same time, when the conditions are right, when the fold brings certain patterns into alignment. The same insight might become accessible to many minds simultaneously. The theory of evolution occurred to both Darwin and Wallace. The telephone was invented by multiple inventors within a few years. Calculus was developed independently by Newton and Leibniz. Perhaps these weren't coincidences, but examples of consciousness accessing the same information through the folded dimensions. Consider what the fold might mean for death and the continuity of consciousness. In our materialist worldview, consciousness ends when the brain stops functioning. But if consciousness is more fundamental, if it's a property of the universe that brains organize and focus rather than create, then death might not be the absolute ending we assume. The patterns of consciousness, the information that constitutes our thoughts and memories and personality, might persist in some form in the folded dimensions. This doesn't necessarily mean traditional concepts of afterlife or reincarnation are literally true, but it might mean that consciousness, or the information patterns we identify as consciousness, can persist and transform in ways we don't yet understand. During the fold, these patterns might influence new emerging consciousnesses, might contribute to the cosmic field of awareness, might even maintain some form of coherence and continuity we can't currently imagine. Death might be less like annihilation, and more like a phase transition, a transformation from localized to distributed consciousness. The fold might also offer a new perspective on the hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience arises from objective physical processes. If the universe folds through dimensions we can't directly perceive, consciousness might emerge from processes occurring in these hidden dimensions. The neural correlates of consciousness that we observe in the brain might be three-dimensional shadows of higher dimensional processes. The feeling of what it's like to be, the redness of red, the painfulness of pain, the joy of joy, might be experiences of the folded dimensions bleeding through into our three-dimensional awareness. This could explain why consciousness seems so resistant to reductionist explanation. We've been trying to understand it entirely in terms of three-dimensional physics and chemistry, but if consciousness involves higher dimensions, we'll never fully understand it without incorporating the fold into our models. It would be like trying to understand a three-dimensional object by only looking at its two-dimensional shadow. We might learn a lot, but we'd always be missing something essential. Let's imagine how understanding the fold might change human society and culture. If we discovered that the universe really does fold, that consciousness is truly interconnected, that our actions ripple through dimensions affecting distant times and places, how would this change how we live? Perhaps we would develop a more profound sense of responsibility, knowing that our choices affect not just our immediate environment, but the entire cosmic web. Perhaps we would prioritize cooperation over competition, understanding that harming others ultimately harms ourselves through the folded dimensions. Education might focus not just on accumulating knowledge, but on developing sensitivity to the fold, learning to perceive and work with the subtle connections that link all things. Medicine might expand beyond treating individual bodies to understanding how health and illness propagate through the folded dimensions of family, community, and ecosystem. Technology might shift from exploiting nature to harmonizing with the cosmic rhythms, designing systems that work with the fold rather than against it. Art and literature might explore new forms that express the folded nature of reality. Music might develop compositions that can only be fully appreciated during certain phases of the fold. Visual art might create works that seem to extend into dimensions we can't see but can somehow sense. Stories might be written that make sense only when read in a non-linear way, reflecting the non-linear nature of time during the fold. We might develop entirely new art forms that we can't currently imagine, ways of expressing and experiencing beauty that require sensitivity to the folded dimensions. Science itself might be transformed by the discovery of the fold. We might need new mathematics that can describe spaces that are simultaneously separated and connected, processes that are both local and non-local, causality that flows both forward and backward in time. Physics might merge with consciousness studies, recognizing that observer and observed are connected through the fold in ways that make purely objective observation impossible. Biology might discover that life is even more interconnected than we thought, with organisms sharing information through folded space in ways that transcend genetic inheritance and ecological interaction. The discovery of the fold might also help us resolve some of the great philosophical questions that have puzzled humanity for millennia. The question of free will versus determinism might find resolution in understanding that both are true at different levels. Our choices are free in three-dimensional space, but part of a larger pattern in the folded dimensions. The question of whether mathematics is discovered or invented might be resolved by recognizing that mathematical truths exist in the folded dimensions, and we discover them when our consciousness aligns with these patterns. Even our understanding of ethics and morality might be transformed. If we're all connected through the fold, if harming others literally harms ourselves through higher dimensional connections, then ethical behavior isn't just a social convention, but a cosmic necessity. The golden rule, treat others as you would want to be treated, might be less a moral commandment and more a description of how reality actually works in the folded dimensions. Kindness, compassion, and love might be recognized not as soft emotions but as powerful forces that strengthen the coherence of the cosmic fold. But perhaps the most profound implication of the fold is what it suggests about the nature of reality itself. If the universe folds and unfolds, if consciousness and cosmos are intimately connected, if meaning and purpose emerge from this cosmic rhythm, then reality is far more alive, far more aware, far more meaningful than our current worldview suggests. We're not accidental observers in a meaningless universe, but essential participants in a cosmic dance of extraordinary beauty and complexity. This doesn't mean we should abandon scientific rigor or embrace wishful thinking. The fold, if it exists, is a physical phenomenon that can be studied, measured, and understood. But it does mean that the universe might be more like a living organism than a machine, more like a mind than a computer, more like a story than an equation. And we're not just reading this story, we're writing it with every thought, every dream, every choice we make rippling through the folded dimensions, contributing to the ongoing creation of reality. And so we come to the end of our journey. Though in a universe that folds and unfolds eternally, perhaps there are no true endings, only pauses, only moments when we stop to rest and reflect before the next cycle begins. We've travelled far together tonight, from the familiar comfort of your room out to the vast scales of cosmic structure, through dimensions our minds can barely grasp, into the deepest questions of consciousness and meaning. And now, as our contemplation draws to a close, as you feel yourself drifting closer to sleep, let's return to where we began, to that simple, impossible question: what if the universe folded in half every night? We've explored this question not as scientists seeking definitive proof, not as philosophers demanding logical certainty, but as dreamers, as wanderers, as conscious beings trying to feel our way into a mystery that might or might not correspond to physical reality. And perhaps that's exactly the right approach. Perhaps some truths are too large, too subtle, too interwoven with the nature of consciousness itself to be captured entirely by equations and experiments. Perhaps some aspects of reality require not just intellectual understanding, but a kind of full-being comprehension that includes emotion, intuition, and imagination. The fold, as we've imagined it, remains a thought experiment, a gentle fiction, a bedtime story for curious minds. Science has not detected it. Our telescopes haven't seen space bending in the ways we've described. Our instruments haven't measured the cosmic breathing we've envisioned. And perhaps they never will. Perhaps the universe doesn't fold. Perhaps space remains steadfastly three-dimensional. Perhaps the vast distances between stars are exactly what they seem, insurmountable gulfs that keep us isolated on our tiny world. But even if the physical fold doesn't exist, the contemplation of it has value. It's reminded us that the universe is far stranger than our everyday experience suggests. It's shown us that there are still profound mysteries waiting to be discovered, still questions that can fill us with wonder rather than answers that close off possibility. It's invited us to see reality as more fluid, more interconnected, more alive than we usually imagine. And perhaps most importantly, it's given us a framework for thinking about our place in the cosmos that includes both scientific rigor and poetic imagination. Think about how different you feel now compared to when we began this journey. Your breathing has likely deepened and slowed. Your thoughts have become less linear, more associative. The boundaries between waking and sleeping, between self and world, between possible and impossible have softened. You're entering that liminal state where consciousness begins its nightly transformation, where the rational mind releases its grip and something deeper, older, wiser begins to emerge. Whether or not the universe physically folds, your consciousness is beginning its own fold, drawing inward, preparing for the journey through sleep and dreams. And in this state, perhaps you can feel something that our discussion has been pointing toward all along. Not the literal folding of space through higher dimensions, but the psychological and spiritual truth that the fold represents. The truth that we are more connected than we appear to be, that consciousness is more fundamental than we've been taught, that the universe is more meaningful than our reductionist philosophies suggest, that mystery and wonder are not failures of knowledge but essential aspects of reality that keep us growing, searching, evolving towards something we can't yet imagine. The question, what if the universe folded in half every night, has been our koan, our meditation object, our doorway into a different way of perceiving reality. Like all good questions, it's less important for the answer it might generate than for the journey it takes us on, the perspectives it opens up, the assumptions it challenges. It's invited us to think cosmically while remaining grounded in personal experience, to embrace scientific speculation while honouring ancient wisdom, to expand our conception of what's possible while accepting the limits of what we can know. As you lie there, feeling sleep approaching like a gentle tide, consider that every night's sleep is a kind of folding, whether or not the universe participates. Your consciousness folds inward, withdrawing from the external world, entering dimensions of experience that daylight consciousness can't access. Your dreams fold together, memories and imagination, past and future, self and other, creating narratives that follow their own logic, their own physics, their own meaning. And every morning you unfold again, bringing back fragments of the night's journey, integrating them into your waking awareness, using them to navigate the challenges and opportunities of a new day. This personal folding and unfolding that you experience every night might be a microcosm of something larger, or it might simply be the way consciousness has evolved to process information and maintain coherence. Either way, it's a reminder that you are part of patterns and rhythms larger than your individual existence. Your sleep connects you to every other sleeping being, all participating in the same ancient rhythm. Your dreams connect you to the collective unconscious, that reservoir of symbols and meanings that all humans share. Your waking and sleeping, your folding and unfolding, are part of the larger dance of consciousness that has been going on since awareness first emerged in the universe. Let me leave you with a series of images, gentle thoughts to carry you into sleep, each one a different facet of the fold we've been contemplating. Picture the universe as an immense flower that closes its petals each night, drawing all its beauty and fragrance inward, protecting something precious at its centre. Perhaps consciousness itself, perhaps the seeds of tomorrow's possibilities. In the morning, it opens again, spreading its petals to catch the light of awareness, sharing its beauty with all who can perceive it. Picture the universe as a vast lung, breathing in and out with a rhythm measured in eons, each breath mixing the atmospheres of countless worlds, each exhalation spreading the seeds of life across the cosmos. You're a cell in this cosmic lung, your own breathing synchronized with the larger rhythm, contributing to the exchange of matter and energy, information and awareness that keeps the universe alive and evolving. Picture the universe as an infinite ocean whose tides are the fold, drawing back to reveal hidden treasures on the cosmic shore, then rushing forward to connect distant lands with currents of possibility. You're a drop in this ocean, distinct but not separate, carrying within you the memory of every shore you've touched, every depth you've explored, every other drop you've merged with and separated from in the endless circulation of cosmic waters. Picture the universe as a dreaming mind and physical reality as its dream. The fold is when the dreamer stirs, when the dream becomes lucid, when the boundaries between different dream scenarios become permeable. You're both a character in this dream and a fragment of the dreamer's awareness, experiencing the dream from within while dimly remembering that you are also the one who dreams. Picture the universe as a piece of music, a symphony of impossible complexity, where every particle is a note, every interaction is a harmony, every conscious being is a melody line. The fold is when all the instruments come together in a cosmic crescendo, when themes separated by vast movements suddenly interweave, when the music remembers itself as a single composition rather than scattered fragments of sound. And finally, picture the universe as exactly what it appears to be, a vast, mostly empty space scattered with islands of matter and energy, expanding according to physical laws we're only beginning to understand, indifferent to human hopes and fears, yet somehow having given rise to beings capable of contemplating it, questioning it, finding beauty and meaning in its patterns. Even without the fold, this universe is sufficiently wonderful, sufficiently mysterious, sufficiently worthy of our awe and our attempts to understand. Whether the universe folds or not, whether consciousness is fundamental or emergent, whether we are alone or part of a cosmic community, whether meaning is discovered or created, these questions remain open, and perhaps that's as it should be. A universe with all the answers would be a finished universe, static and complete. But our universe is unfinished, still evolving, still exploring its own possibilities, and we are part of that exploration, each of us contributing our unique perspective, our questions, our dreams to the ongoing creation of reality. As sleep finally claims you, as your consciousness performs its nightly fold, whether or not the universe participates, carry with you this thought: you are part of something magnificent. Not because the universe might fold in ways we've imagined tonight, but because you exist at all, because you can wonder about such things, because you contain within your finite being the capacity to contemplate infinity. You are the universe becoming aware of itself, questioning itself, imagining new possibilities for itself. In your dreams tonight, you might find yourself flying through folded dimensions, meeting consciousnesses from distant worlds, experiencing the unity that underlies apparent separation. Or you might simply rest in the darkness, your mind processing the day's experiences, your body repairing itself, your consciousness preparing for tomorrow's unfolding. Either way, you're participating in something profound, something that connects you to every other dreamer, every other conscious being, every other point of awareness in the cosmos. The question we've explored tonight, what if the universe folded in half every night, has no definitive answer, and perhaps it never will. But the questioning itself has been valuable, has stretched our imagination, has reminded us that reality is far stranger and more wonderful than we usually acknowledge. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps the purpose of such questions is not to find answers, but to keep us wondering, to prevent us from becoming too certain, too settled in our understanding, too closed to new possibilities. Somewhere in the vast darkness above you, stars are being born and dying, galaxies are colliding and merging, black holes are bending space and time in ways that challenge our understanding. Somewhere, perhaps, other conscious beings are lying down to rest, wondering about the nature of the universe, imagining possibilities we can't conceive, and somewhere, in dimensions we can't perceive, or in futures we haven't reached, the answers to our deepest questions might be waiting, patient as stars, for us to grow enough to understand them. But for now, for tonight, let the questions themselves be enough. Let the mystery be your pillow, the wonder be your blanket, the possibility of the fold be the gentle rhythm that rocks you to sleep. You don't need to figure it all out. You don't need to solve the cosmos. You just need to rest, to dream, to let your consciousness perform its ancient folding, trusting that tomorrow you'll unfold again, carrying within you whatever wisdom the night has offered. The universe, folded or unfolded, will continue its patient spinning. The earth will turn, bringing dawn to your part of the world in a few hours. The sun will rise, or rather, Earth's rotation will bring you back into the light, and you'll wake, perhaps remembering fragments of dreams, perhaps carrying a vague sense of having touched something larger than yourself, perhaps simply feeling rested and ready for a new day. And maybe, just maybe, as you go about your tomorrow, you'll occasionally remember our thought experiment. You'll look at the sky and wonder if space is more than it seems. You'll feel a moment of unexpected connection with someone, and wonder if consciousness is more unified than we suppose. You'll have a creative insight and wonder if it came through folded dimensions from somewhere else in the cosmos. You'll remember that the universe is full of mystery, full of possibility, full of questions that lead not to answers but to ever deeper wonder. This is my wish for you as our journey together ends and your journey into sleep begins. May you always retain the capacity for wonder. May you never lose the ability to ask impossible questions. May you find in the mystery of existence not a source of anxiety but a source of awe. May you recognize yourself as part of something magnificent, whether or not it folds, and may your dreams tonight, and all your nights, be filled with the gentle impossibilities that make life worth living, questions worth asking, universes worth imagining. Sleep now, dear traveller. Let your consciousness fold into dreams, whether or not the universe folds with you. Trust in the rhythm that has carried life through billions of years, the rhythm of waking and sleeping, questioning and resting, reaching out and drawing in. You are safe in the cosmos, held by forces we're only beginning to understand, part of patterns we can barely perceive, participating in something that transcends our ability to fully comprehend and yet includes us completely. The universe, in all its vast mystery, in all its impossible scale, in all its quantum weirdness and relativistic beauty, has somehow given rise to you, to this moment, to this gentle ending of our contemplation. Whether it folds or not, whether consciousness is fundamental or emergent, whether meaning is inherent or created, you're here, you're aware, you are part of the cosmic story. And that, perhaps, is the deepest mystery and the greatest wonder of all. Rest well, cosmic dreamer. The universe, folded or unfolded, will be here when you wake, still mysterious, still beautiful, still inviting you to wonder, to question, to imagine new possibilities. And who knows? Perhaps tonight, in the depths of sleep, in the realm of dreams, you'll discover something about the nature of reality that daylight consciousness can't grasp. Perhaps you'll touch the fold, if it exists, or create it through the power of imagination if it doesn't. Perhaps you'll find that the boundary between real and imagined is itself just another fold, another dimension of the infinite mystery we're all part of. The night is deep now, the fold complete, if it happens at all, and it's time for consciousness to rest in the mystery, rather than trying to solve it. Let go of the questions, let go of the wondering, let go of the need to understand. Simply be, simply breathe, simply trust that you're exactly where you need to be in the cosmic dance. The universe has been patient for billions of years. It can wait until tomorrow for you to resume your questioning. And so, with infinite gentleness, with profound gratitude for your attention and your openness to impossible possibilities, I release you into sleep, into dreams, into whatever folded or unfolded dimensions await your consciousness in the hours before dawn. May your rest be deep, may your dreams be illuminating, and may you wake tomorrow with a renewed sense of wonder at the magnificent mystery of existence. Good night, fellow traveller in the possibly folding universe. Until consciousness unfolds again with the morning light, rest in the beautiful uncertainty of it all.